This special meeting of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of the special meeting of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board at the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers a list of dates indicating that the special meeting would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 o'clock p.m. on Monday, June 30th, 2014. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll of the council.
Councilman Chase. Councilwoman Francois. Here. Councilman Kramer.
Here.
Mayor Levine.
Here.
Councilman Prasad.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Regan. Councilwoman Sherman.
Here.
Councilman Vasanella. Councilman Wright.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. I'll give you the basic flow of the meeting today. It's a special meeting regarding Catalpa Park, and so we're going to limit ourselves to just that item. If you want an agenda, which I'll outline, it's pretty basic. They're over here by our clerk, Ms. McCarthy. Feel free to go up and get it. We are first going to have a presentation by our engineers who looked at various parts of the park in conjunction with some of our committees. Then there will be a council discussion on what's happening. We may or may not ask questions of our engineer, our township manager, CME, our consulting engineers, and we may or may not make any decisions on going forward. And if we do make a decision to go forward, it's going to be on, it was basically put into 3 phases, but we don't have to follow that. We can pick any of those or part or something such as that. After that, we'll open it up to the public. We're glad to hear what's on your mind. I'll give you the time frames and such as that when we get there. And then you'll come to the podium. And at that point, I'll ask you to line up. And please note we're being audio taped, videotaped for our cable access channel. And when you come to the podium, you give us your name and address and state what you have to say. And again, I'll give you our other policies at that point. And then the council may or may not have any other discussion or decisions after that. And then we'll adjourn. Okay, so first, it's item number 4 on the agenda, a presentation on Catalpa Park improvements that are proposed. And from CME, our good consulting engineers, first we'll have Mr. Rob Russo.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
As I said, my name is Rob Russo. I'm from CME Associates. We're consulting engineers. Along with me, I have Steve Lemoyne, who is the landscape architect for the project. We had been asked to prepare conceptual plans for the Catalpa Park improvements, which we're going to present tonight. Just by way of background, the park is located at the southwestern intersection of Old Elite Road and South Middlebush Road. The intersection is this location here. The site contains approximately 108 acres in size, and there's generally residential uses to the eastern portion of the site, some more residential uses to the north and northwest, and this area up here of the site is the Bunker Hill Golf Course, and generally to the south of the site is the 10-mile brook. There is an existing farmhouse located on the site. It's generally, I'll call it more of the middle of the site. That farmhouse has access through an existing driveway, which exits out onto Old Elite Road. The remainder of the site generally contains open areas to the south and northeast, and I'll call this the middle of the site, or northern portion of the site is more densely wooded area of the site. We did prepare a letter of interpretation for this site, which is approved by the DEP. The letter of interpretation basically approves the wetlands mapping that our environmentalists did. There is wetlands on site. The main portion of the wetlands is in this area of the site along an existing brook. There are some isolated wetlands on the southern portion of the site and also along 10 Mile Brook. With our plan, we did try to avoid disturbing as much wetlands as possible. As part of the township recreational assessment that was done several years ago, there was a concept plan done for this site. We did take that concept and review it with the town engineer in preparing our concept that we have here tonight. After we prepared that preliminary concept, we did have several meetings with the township. We took into consideration and went through different changes to the concept. And basically, this is the plan that we are here to present tonight. As you can see, and as the mayor said, it is a three-phase plan. Phase 1 is located in the northwestern portion of the site and does contain the proposed access road to the site. Phase 2 is located at the eastern portion of the site and does contain the area of the existing homestead. And the remainder of the site is Phase 3, which is more in the southern portion of the site. This slide is basically a blow-up of the Phase 1 improvements. And as you can see, Phase 1 contains the entrance driveway to the site. As you enter the site, to the right will be a main parking area with enough parking for approximately 146 vehicles. Towards the back of that parking area is proposed to be 6 tennis courts and 4 basketball courts. Also off the main parking area, we have the main bathroom facilities, and to the west of those facilities, a large tot lot area which could accommodate multiple age children, and also seating around that area for adults. Also proposed in this phase is a large picnic area, which will contain also this large open-air pavilion with seating for picnics. And connected to that area, we're proposing walking paths that will meander through the woods. We did try to plan the improvements in this area of the site, which, if you can see from the aerials, is more secondary growth. The other areas of this site is older growth trees, and we tried to avoid those trees as much as possible. The walking paths through the site would meander through, and we would avoid removing trees and constructing those walking paths. Moving on to Phase 2. Phase 2 is in the northeastern portion of the site. It's also off of the main entrance driveway proposed. There is a 100 space parking area proposed for 2 cricket fields. The larger cricket field is approximately 516 feet by 450 feet, and the smaller cricket field is approximately 459 feet by 400 feet. And I believe the recreational director gave us guidance on the sizes of the cricket fields. Also in this area, we're proposing a smaller open-air pavilion, which will provide seating and shade for spectators for the cricket games. As I mentioned before, this area did contain the most wetlands. There is a couple areas here that will be disturbed. This little, I'll call it a finger area that comes out, is actually considered a wetland swale. There's no buffers associated, and it can be filled for the proposed improvements. There's also another, I'll call it a finger here, which we tried to avoid, but if we wanted to fill that area, we could shift this second smaller cricket field more to the west, which provide a larger buffer for the residents on the east. Moving along to Phase 3. Phase 3 starts at the end of the entrance road from Phase 1. Proposed in Phase 3 would be a 220 space parking lot, 2 softball fields, and 3 soccer fields. Also in this area would be a small tot lot area so children can play by the softball and soccer fields, and the secondary bathroom facility. Connecting all 3 phases together would be walking paths along the entrance driveway and also the walking path through the woods to the pavilion area. We're also proposing a buffer along the eastern residential property. Just for reference, the closest corner of the parking area is approximately 150 feet to the property line, and the soccer fields are approximately 200 feet to the property line. There is an existing wooded area in here which will remain, and we would propose to enhance that with additional landscaping. There are permits that are required for the construction. There are several wetlands permits for partial filling, road crossing, and storm outfalls. There's also a flood hazard area permit that would be required for the road crossing and outfalls, DNR canal approval, and soil conservation approval. At this time, we estimate, and it's just a concept phase, so they're very rough estimates. We estimate that phase one, the construction would cost approximately $3 million. Phase two would be in the $800,000 range, and phase three, $2.25 million. That's basically the concept we're proposing. If there's any questions or we can give any details that you require, we're open up to any questions.
Okay, Mr. Vornlocker? And before we do, maybe you want to mention how that would be funded also?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project would be funded through the Open Space Trust, which is dedicated funds towards the acquisition and development of our open space properties. The current thought is that the bonding process would be utilized, much as it was in Middlebush Park, to fund this project. There is available bond money, however, this project, given the cost estimates, would require council to authorize the bonding of funds that would be dedicated to the Open Space Trust.
Okay. So it's coming out of open space fund, no tax increase or anything, it's that fund?
No,
which is
the
here
open
every year.
space tax, as you know, is a dedicated tax. It doesn't increase because it's set by ordinance and, subsequently behind that state statute. And so that money is specifically earmarked for either the acquisition of land, acquisition of development rights, or development of recreational facilities in the township.
Okay, thanks.
And actually, as Mr. Chase just pointed out to me, it's not simply by ordinance, it was a referendum.
It
It's
absolutely
the vote of
was.
the people to do that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, and before we get to the council, Mr. Vornlocker, you or anything else to add, or we're okay?
Well, that's the basic concept plan. And certainly,
Okay.
council will have the opportunity now to ask Mr. Russo or myself or any members of the staff any questions about the concept itself. I'd just like to take just one step further from what Mr. Russo said. The concept of this plan has gone through the Open Space Advisory Committee, the Council's Land Use Committee, and the Rec Council. It's been through several iterations that have reached this point now where we're making this public presentation. This property in particular, Catalpa, was acquired by the township in 2000 from a developer. The developer had intended to develop this with residential units, and the township purchased this property, and it's been earmarked as the southern park property since it was acquired in 2000 with Open Space Trust funds for the acquisition. The plan that you see here today has, like I said, has been through several variations, beginning with the initial concept that was developed as a part of the recreation needs assessment that Branstetter Carroll did for the township in 2011 and 2012. So this is, in basic form, what was recommended with some changes in that needs assessment.
Okay. So we're at item number 5, a council discussion. After this, council has a discussion, asks our questions, and may or may not make a decision. It'll be open to the public, and again, I'll give you our policies at that point. So
Mr.
now
Mayor?
we're open for council. Councilman Kramer?
We generally have public discussion before council discussion. Was this-
In this particular case, I think that it might be beneficial to hear the questions that council has for this before we get into the public discussion, because I'm sure there will be several issues to be discussed that might benefit the public.
Okay.
And-
I'm predicting there will be a council discussion again after the.
I'm good.
And
That's always
I was
happened.
actually, not to interrupt, but I think that the way this will follow is there will be a council discussion, and then there will be a public discussion, and that will be followed by another council discussion,
Okay.
at which time I'll seek some direction from council as to how we proceed, if nothing else.
Okay. So on, if I may, on Phase 2, the lighter area, the lighter green, that's essentially grass or mowed. It's low. There's no visual buffering there. What would be the second finger you've referred to, the one next to the finger of wetlands, next, right, exactly. What would be the consequences of filling that, were the words you used, and moving the smaller cricket field closer to the stands?
That area of wetlands is actually considered a wetland swale and can be filled, and there's no,
A wetlands what?
it's actually considered a wetland swale,
Swale.
so it can be filled just by applying for a permit.
Okay. And I noticed the pitches are parallel. Is that due to sun angle or something? So turning it would not be optimal?
Exactly.
Okay.
All the fields are basically oriented, except for the soccer, in their optimal positions, including the softball. Soccer is usually a north-south orientation, but due to the orientation of the parcel itself, this orientation lent itself to for a better fit.
Okay. Is there anything that prevents us, I'm not familiar with cricket, of some of that lighter green area having more wood, trees? Or is that a safety or?
You're saying as far as the grass area surrounding the cricket fields?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on here, there's still, the buffering is shown, but there's definitely opportunities to increase the aesthetic with some vegetation as far as trees, landscape beds, and some more canopy trees to kind of reinstate and more of a wooded lot.
Okay.
There are trees there right now?
No.
No trees at all?
Nope, it's an open grass field.
There are trees along the property line, but they're mainly on the adjacent property. If you look at the lot line, it's the canopy that comes over. It appears to be, at least.
Okay. Mayor? Okay. Councilwoman Francois? Were you done?
Yeah, no, I mean, we would not want to disturb any of the existing trees, and especially mature trees. I've been on the planning board, and we never allow any of those to be disturbed in any way. So any cutting of trees would not be acceptable. We need all kinds of, visual as well as sound barriers of all kinds. So if we can prevent any kind of disturbance to the local residents, we want to make sure of that. One request I'd like to make is to Mr. Warnlocker. The Brandstatter Carroll study that we did was a township-wide study, and the conclusions were that we were way under providing for the recreational needs of the town, especially in the southern part of the town. And so some of their recommendations were based on that. So if
Well, all of the recommendations for this park come out of the Brandstatter Carroll study. The need for athletic fields and active recreation was clearly spelled out in that study, and this is one part of the township's attempt to meet those needs that were identified.
And it is in comparison to other towns of similar size and populations. that we
Woefully
did get a-
inadequate.
Yeah. So that's part of what we're trying to do. And also, many years ago, we did have our youth, two of them kill each other and hated to go to funerals, so we'd rather have them playing, actively involved, rather than, so, and beyond that, you're also talking about, health and couch potatoes, et cetera. So we have to somehow provide for at least the means for it. So that's part of what we're trying to do. And at the same time, we have to keep in mind the ecological. So it's not an easy decision. Any way you look at it, it's not an easy decision. You've got the ecological aspects of it, the natural aspects of it. So the least amount of, and if we have to go back to the drawing board, we go back to the drawing board. But that's my personal feeling on it. But making sure that we had adequate buffering and protection, and having learned a lesson from having lights, et cetera, there won't be any lights or sound systems or anything like that in this park. So that's what I have to say as far as this park in the conceptual stage is concerned. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Francois?
Yeah, I was going to basically say what he said. We did learn a significant amount of lessons from Middlebush Park, and we know that there are people that are concerned about having parks in their backyard, very close to their backyard, and the need for buffering, and we've learned a lot about having lights and talking about proposing sound systems, and not for any one of these phases will we be putting in lights or a sound system. So we want to put that to bed, give you some sense of rest, and maybe take away some anxiety. In terms of the phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, Mr. Von Locker, can you talk about why we chose phase 1, 2, and 3 in that order, and what we're planning on phase 3 for phase 3? Because that didn't come up.
And I will speak some to that, and I'm going to ask Mr. Russo to also speak some to that as well. Phase 1, it requires, I believe, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong here, that the development of Phase 1, Phase 2's development is reliant on Phase 1's development because some of the improvements that go along with Phase 1, such as the bathroom facilities and the roadway coming in, kind of dictated that development of the park in Phase 1 would come first. The second phase, again, just following suit, Phase 2 is relying on Phase 1. Now, Phase 3 was intentionally identified as Phase 3 because there may be an alternate to Phase 3. And so on July 9th, there's a joint meeting of the Board of Education and Township Council Committee to discuss plans that were presented to the township several months ago by the Board of Education to seek out interest from the town about the development of athletic fields behind a proposed school that the Board of Education plans to go to referendum for in September on Claremont Road. If that can satisfy the needs of the southern portion of the township as far as these athletic fields are concerned, then that presents the opportunity to council to abandon Phase 3 long before it would ever be considered for construction. So that is ultimately, I think, the goal here is to pursue those athletic fields at that Board of Education property. And then we can look to alter these plans. And so I gave instruction to Mr. Russo to specifically identify Phase 3 as Phase 3 because we need some time to pursue that with the Board of Education. They approached us initially with the thought that a joint effort between the Township and the Board of Education might be beneficial to both parties in that we could construct the athletic fields for our use during those times when the school is not in session, and then the school, should it be built, could utilize those fields for things like physical education and recess during school hours when the Township would have no need of those athletic fields. So that meeting is scheduled for July 9th. Unfortunately, I know cart before the horse, but it's been a difficult road to get that meeting scheduled, and we do have it scheduled, and that is one of the primary agenda items for discussion that evening. So my hope is that we can come back to council in the very near future and indicate that our plan is to pursue that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. Are you done? I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, have we talked about any type of a timeline for phase one? Or
Well, as a rough timeline, based on my experiences so far with developing parks, we're at concept phase now. If council were to give me direction tonight to move forward with the full design of phase one, my anticipation is that phase one design would take approximately 3 months. After that 3-month period, that design would then go through land use, open space, rec advisory, and based on recent conversations, and certainly my recommendation at this point, is the planning board. So now we're talking about 4 different boards, so even if I could schedule it very well, I think the reality is, as we move through, that would not be accomplished until maybe the first or second month of 2015. If there were changes to the plan, if it's accepted as it is, then it could move forward to the bid process. If it needs changes, that would delay it further. I think that given that and the likelihood that there would be at least some minor changes to the plans, as there usually are, we're talking about maybe February, March, before the plans can then go to full council for their authorization to go out to bid. Once it's to full council and their authorization to bid, bids are received. That's a 90-day process. I would not anticipate the beginning of construction of phase one until probably the summer of 2015 to start, at the earliest.
Mr. Vorner, could I
Yes.
also add, as I mentioned, we do need environmental permits, DEP permits, which could take, 3 to 6 months, depending on the extensive.
And certainly, we can't apply for DEP permits until we have a plan that council authorizes to move forward on. So that certainly has an impact as well.
thank
So it will move slowly. I guess that's, I gave you a lot of dates and times, but the truth is, it will move slowly through this process. It's not something that we will move quickly on, because we want to make sure that everything is done properly as we move through the process.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to reiterate, because that makes a good point. If the council were to decide something tonight or shortly, it would go through at least 2 more boards that meet publicly, Open Space and Planning Board.
Correct.
Okay, so people would, open to the public. Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Sherman.
And rec advisory is also a publicly
Okay.
held meeting as well.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is for Mr. Lemoyne. In your mandate as the landscape architect for this, have you been focused at all on the buffering issue with regard to the residents? Have you planned a planting regime for the protection of the privacy of the residents?
Yeah, yes, we have actually looked into it. It's not shown specifically on the concept plan because, things can change as far as locations and everything like that. But as Rob said, we did leave a majority or most of the buffering that's existing there. The residents for phase 3, that buffer would remain. Again, on phase 2, the existing buffer between the residents and that phase would remain, as well as everything around in phase 1. So as far as a planting palette, it's been discussed. It hasn't been finalized or even gotten down to specific species, but, mostly it would be native species that would be indigenous to the area. We very rarely bring any type of foreign species into the sites.
And the depth of the buffering will vary? Do you have a max and a minimum?
I would say at this point, it's not exactly specific, but our buffers usually are about 50-foot width by the time the trees, with tree canopy and everything like that.
50.
But I'd just like to add here, the one thing I want to clarify is this is a concept plan versus a
Understood.
site plan. A
Understood.
site plan is very specific as to the landscape plan. That has not been done because we have not ordered that to be done yet.
Understood. I just want to make sure that it is very clear that the buffering of the residents' properties and their privacy is paramount.
And I understand, and I just want to clarify terminology here because I think it's very important because we've just been down this road. A buffer is very different than screening. A buffer is simply a distance. Screening is the plantings and existing growth that are there. So what we're talking about here, I think, is screening versus buffering. Buffering is just a simple distance from a property line. So let's not, I don't want to confuse the two terms because the screening is the important part that we're talking about here.
More is better than less, and
Well,
so buffering is the right term, and what you're using as the screening for the buffering is important, but I want to make sure the buffering distance is being very carefully analyzed and the most buffer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to confuse this. In technical terms, the buffer is simply the distance between a property line
I'm not
and
confused.
where the development starts. The screening within the buffering is what we're talking about. And
Okay.
that is when the concept plan was done, every effort was made to leave as much of the existing vegetation in this property as could be and still develop the amenities within the park. The outside property lines and any screening that exists within that buffer has been left alone. According to this concept, but that's all that this is a concept. Once we get into the full site plan the design of this park, which will go through that whole process that I just spoke about, and this is certainly the time to tell our engineer what our desires are. And our desires are to keep as much of the screening, if not all, in those areas that are adjacent to developed properties of our neighbors.
And I also would like added screening to maximize and perhaps go beyond whatever is possible that you have in mind right now. I don't have a number. I haven't really seen the whole plan, but I want you to know that the screening is a very important issue for me, since I've seen what it has done to the residents surrounding the Middlebush Park area. All right, my second question or issue, and perhaps the recreation representative can help with that. When Brad Stetter Carroll did this report, the fields at Colonial Park did not exist. They do today. What impact do they have on the availability of fields that might reduce the number of fields needed from the township in any development, especially this one?
I think there's a significant difference between township-managed facilities and county-managed facilities, because the county facilities are open to anyone in the county on a first-come, first-served basis and through a permit reservation process, which they will charge everyone, including your youth sports organizations. So while those fields do exist and they are available, your youth sports organizations would be paying to have a permit for those fields. And in addition to that, there, I guess, use on weekends too, where maybe during the week they may make some field space available. On the weekends, that is their prime time to rent those facilities out and make money on that rental. So unless your youth sports organizations are prepared to pay that regular fee
Right.
It's an issue for them,
And ours are free of any fees.
based on the recommendations of the Advisory Rec Council, yes.
Okay. So basically, the impact is, have they given Franklin any consideration as far as those fees are concerned?
Not really.
No.
I mean, there might be we've had a slight reduction just to the department where we've done some of the maintenance on the field, so I don't know what could be negotiated. However, I really can't answer that question specifically. I would anticipate having to pay the fee, which I believe is $15 a permit. So,
It's not a horrendous amount, but I
But it
understand
does add-
it's
it does
free is
add
still
up.
better.
I mean, granted, the field space is there. It certainly does help, but it's not in the true sense or the expectations of meeting capacity-wise what the plan says. Plus, it does specify a certain number of township-owned and managed fields, in addition to what might be provided by your, county facilities.
Right. So we don't have experience yet. Obviously, they're not open, and they're not being utilized. I'm not sure when they're going to be available.
I don't have their schedules.
No, I understand. All I'm thinking is maybe in a year or so, we'll have a different image based on what actually does happen. But right now, I understand there's no information. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilman Ted Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have quite a bit to say based on having visited the property a number of times. But first of all, there was also a committee, a special ad hoc committee on having a southern park and sort of around 2008, and before I was on council, and it was very much at Councilwoman Eberle's instigation, and in fact, there was a quite extensive survey of people in the area about having a park and where they would prefer it to be. And as I recall, the number one site was this property. The number two site was the field at the corner of Saddam and South Middlebush, the Dunn property. And the number three was Claremont Avenue area. So that was somewhat of a go-ahead for designing in this area. That said, I'm well aware that the houses at the end of Magellan, the even-numbered houses there, really have no screening from that field. There is a tree line, they're mature trees, there is no undergrowth, people look right out on that field. And that is why I want in the strongest possible way to explore moving the proposed facilities there to Claremont Avenue in connection, whether or not a school is built there. And my guess is that based on the history of school referendums in the township, it won't pass this time, but it might pass in the future. But if we're building fields primarily for general township use, we can go ahead and build them there. However, of course, I don't know that there are any residents of Conservancy Court here. They might have something to say about locating fields there, but at least many fewer people would be directly affected by having the fields there, and they would be towards the back of that property that is away from Claremont, based on the outlines that originally were given to us from the Board of Education. A third point, and I think Mr. and Mrs. Pachalik will probably speak on this, we're preserving a very substantial area around their residence and their farming operation, which we do not want to disturb. And if we don't develop the backfield, I hope we can continue to maintain it as a field with a trail along the far side that would eventually connect up There's long been planned to have a bridge over 10 Mile Run to connect up with trails coming in from Bunker Hill Road. Also, as Mr. Russo noted, Phase 1 is located in the Second Grove Cedar area. We're trying from the beginning to preserve the mature forest there. We'd also be preserving some of the cedar around that, which I think is there's nothing better than existing cedars as a screening. And unfortunately, at Middlebush Park, a lot of them got removed, and what's left down at ground level is not such good screening. But the more according to the plan as shown there, we would be maintaining a substantial amount of screening. And finally, just to comment on what's given as Phase 2, I know the cricketers of the township have long been looking for a real designed, dedicated cricket fields instead of the operations they now have, which are in several cases are just where there's open ground on Naaman Williams Park and at Pine Grove Manor School, but they're in no sense designed cricket fields with a proper pitch for bowling. So it's always been my hope that we would have the cricket fields here. So my recommendation is that we make every effort possible to move the soccer and baseball fields to Claremont Avenue. And that would also, of course, eliminate the parking lot back there in the secondary sanitary facility. And in connection with the sanitary facilities, I should mention that there is a sewer line running through the property, and we are assured that we could hook the sanitary facilities into the sewer line. And in fact, we negotiated with the DEP a slight expansion of the sewer service area so that officially we could do that within our official sewer service area. So that's what I have to say for the moment.
Thank you. Councilman Kramer?
Could you go over the costs of each phase again, please?
Yes, Mr. Kramer. Phase 1 is $3 million. Phase 2 is approximately $800,000. And Phase 3, $2.25 million.
Okay. And Mr. Chase, I didn't quite understand. Are you proposing the baseball fields, softball fields be moved to the school, or would they stay there?
I was proposing that they be moved to the school property
Okay.
on Claremont Avenue, both the baseball and the soccer.
So all of phase
Possible.
3? Okay.
If, and of course, we have to discuss this with the Board of Education and find
Right.
out whether it's possible. But I'd also note that the basketball and tennis courts proposed in Phase 1 are really not likely to be spectator sports area. The noise impact of them is just the people actually playing, which is 2 to 4 people per tennis court and perhaps 12 people per basketball court. Whereas the soccer and baseball fields involve substantially more people and potentially spectators.
So things I would like clearly in the minutes would be that this will go to planning board at some point, that all of council, at least here today, seems to agree. Speak loudly if you don't. No speakers, no lights. And then I personally would like the small cricket field moved closer. I'm generally not a fan of disturbing wetlands, but it sounds like in this case it would be a minimal disturbance. Adding more screening between those fields and the development. And that screening, in my opinion, should be both fast growth and slow growth. We often put in screening that's from this desk this high, and it takes 20 years before it does the screening that we're all anticipating. So I would certainly, and in the long run, that's the right screening to do, but I would like something for some immediate relief. And I absolutely, well, I will be on the committee that will be investigating the moving of Phase 3, and I think that's a good plan, and I would love to see those trails move down and try to connect with the bluffs. I know that people from the Trails Committee are going to come up and talk about the encroachment on the bluff area there. So besides the impact on the housing, it'll be an impact on another type of park that we have.
Mr. Mayor?
And-
Just before-
And just, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Mr. Councilman Wright, one quick interjection.
No, Township Manager, go ahead. You had a question.
I just
Okay,
wanted to
one-
interject on the councilman's first question, but Mr. Mayor, go right ahead.
Pardon me, just as brought to my attention by Councilwoman Sherman, if in the back there's seniors, as told, pregnant woman, please, there's some seats up here, and there are many people who are ladies and gentlemen, may want to give them a seat also. So, Mr. Bornlocker, pardon me.
I just wanted to comment on actually Councilman Kramer's first question, and I'll ask Mr. Russo this question. Mr. Russo, if you gave a cost estimate on Phase 1, I believe Phase 1's cost estimate includes the driveway from Old Vliet Road all the way down to where the parking lot begins for Phase 3.
That's correct.
So if Phase 3 were not constructed, or a decision was made not to pursue Phase 3, that cost estimate for Phase 1 would go down, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I want to ask you for a number. It's a road, and but in that number would go down on the cost estimate. I just want to clarify that.
I have
Okay, Councilman Wright?
just a quick, I never say never, but if you couldn't move that cricket field, okay? If you couldn't move it, it would have to stay where it is, correct? If you couldn't move it or something of that nature? And I didn't want to lead anyone down the Yellow Brick Road, and all of a sudden it stayed there because of the wetlands issue.
I think if we could try to turn it, or we could provide two fields the same size, the smaller fields, and then if we did that, it could be shifted further to the west. But I don't honestly think there'd be an issue with filling of the wetlands well. I'm pretty confident about that.
Okay. Councilman Prasad, did you want to go again?
Yeah, just a question for our recreation director. We are a diverse community, and we have a lot of people here who have migrated from Commonwealth countries who play cricket. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough fields, and they were asking for cricket fields, and they've been coming to the council meetings as well. And I'd just like the recreation director to give everybody an idea the amount of demand there is for cricket fields within the town, especially the residents of the southern part of the town where it seems that most of the cricketers are. And that's why it was decided to put a couple of cricket fields down there. Mrs. Sifowitz, if you could, please.
Right now we have, I think, approximately 6 or 7 cricket teams that are based in Franklin. We do require residency requirements. So at least 51% of the teams that hold permits are made up of residents from the town. In addition to that, there are 2 or 3, and they play full-day games, so they usually start at approximately 11 and run to, say, 6 o'clock at night. And there are some softball cricket teams, which I'm going to say there's, I think, 3 teams right now that hold permits, and they play a half-day game, usually from approximately 9 to 12. I will say one of the things that we see happening with trends in New Jersey is that sport is growing much more rapidly than the amount of field space that's available. So, we do get, I'm going to say probably 5 or 6 calls every year from residents who are representatives of teams seeking field space in addition to the teams that we already have. And unfortunately, it is pretty much on a first-come, first-served basis, and we are trying to accommodate the teams that have played in the previous year. So I would say for the most part, our fields are already locked in to the teams that are using the fields that we have right now. We have 3 on township-owned property.
Great, thank you. Just for a little historical perspective on cricket, it was a game played at the time of independence. George Washington played it, and until Abner Doubleday invented baseball. No, I'm just saying that it is a game that was played in America. It died off. Now it's having a resurgence. So just like soccer is having a resurgence in America, same way. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sherman, please.
I do, that just triggered a couple of questions, again, for the Recreation Department. Who will be scheduling the fields?
She does.
I know that.
Well, the Recreation Department does manage the permits for all of the township-owned
Okay.
parks and facilities.
Are we going to issue permits to other than Franklin teams and Franklin residents?
It's normally not our policy to do that, and for the most part, the fields are, the permits are probably issued or prioritized for township residents. I mean, all parks are open to anyone, but for the most part, it is a township resident that's a permit holder. And for extended use permits for, say, like a league or a tournament or something, like that, it really, the priority is township residents. We're really not entertaining teams from outside of the town.
So even though it's open space money, and are we not allowed to restrict based on that?
That's correct. Because these properties are on our recreational open space inventory, we're governed by Green Acres regulations. These are public parks. The public is defined as anyone, not resident required. Residency is not required to utilize our parks. I think what Mrs. Sipowicz is stating, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the demand for these fields is such that there's never an opportunity for people outside of the township to reserve these fields. The demand is such because there's a shortage
Right.
of these playing fields, so that all of our fields are currently, the permits for these fields are by people who live here, simply by the fact that we don't have enough to begin with for the people who live here.
Right, which I understand, which makes perfect sense. But again, is it first come, first serve, or you can reserve it for Franklin people, and after we have our reservations, and if there's space, we can then let other people in?
That's correct.
It is the second.
Our policy is the second, that
Okay.
it is preference to residents. And once residents have filed all of their permit applications for their season, if there is any vacancies on any of our fields, which we don't experience right now, then it could be made available to someone who lives outside of Franklin Township. That's the difference between a township park and a county park, obviously. And in a county park, it's county residents as the preference, and then out-of-county residents. So that, if someone from Middlesex County were to try to rent the cricket pitch at the Howe Fields at Colonial Park, obviously any county resident would have preference over any non-county resident. It's the same process we use.
Okay. Others? Councilman Kramer.
There was a groan when the money was mentioned. Mr. Manager, if you could discuss the health of our open space, recreation, historic preservation, and agricultural preservation funds at this point.
Currently, the balance of the Open Space Trust is about $16 million. some of that money was money that had been bonded previously and kept as a balance within the trust, and the remainder is money that has been collected as open space tax and has accumulated. Currently, the open space tax brings in about $4.3 million, give or take, annually. And after all of the expenses, debt service, expenses to maintain the properties, money to maintain our historic structures, because that's also part of the open space trust, the trust grows by about $900,000 a year,
So
given our current spending.
to your knowledge, was the expense of this park figured in our planning for open space money?
It was, yes.
And to piggyback, that open space fund can only be used for acquisition of land, development rights, and recreation.
So the
historical.
open space trust, what we commonly refer to as the open space, is the open space, farmland preservation, historic preservation, and recreation trust. It covers all of those things. From that trust, there are grants for the restoration of historic properties, and there's also the maintenance of our own historic properties. There is the development of active and passive recreation. There's the maintenance of our current open space inventory, as well as the acquisition of both land in fee simple and the development rights, and that's commonly referred to as farmland preservation, where we don't actually buy the property, we simply buy the development rights to that property. Those are all appropriate expenditures from that trust.
And the maintenance of our open space property doesn't have to come out of the general treasury taxes. It comes specifically from the dedicated
That's
fund.
correct. The money to maintain our open space properties comes from the open space trust. Additionally, the operating expenses, not salary and wage, but the operating expenses to maintain all of our parks throughout the township also comes from the open space trust.
Okay, thank you.
And I might add that I initially had the opinion that open space money, that the people thought open space money was for open space, habitat preserve. That was my own bent on it. However, the closest public opinion we have on that is, I'm guessing now 7 or 8 years ago, there was a county referendum on whether they should spend money to use this fund for recreation, because their trust fund wasn't set up that way, and it was an overwhelming vote to spend it on recreation. So the best pulse of the people I have is they do want a portion of this money spent on recreation.
Okay, Councilman Chase?
I'd further comment, our Open Space Trust Fund is approximately 15 years old. And for at least the first 10 years of that, it was used almost exclusively to purchase open space and development rights on farmland. And we got a lot of open space, and there are not many more properties in Township which would really be targets for open space preservation, and at least one of those, I know from time to time there are discussions between the owners and the state for at least purchase of development rights there. So over the last 5 years, we have shifted more to use, and particularly since the Branstetter-Carroll report, we have shifted more to the use of that money for development of recreation for those people, particularly younger people, who want to do something more organized than walk on the trails. We have a lot of trails, as well as all of the state trails, the canal towpath, the trails on 6 Mile Run. And when, with the Branstetter-Carroll report, it became clear how far behind other comparable municipalities, we are in providing opportunity for active recreation. It really seemed like a mandate to go ahead and do this. Now, the people that were polled at that time actually have some other ideas that we hope eventually we'll get to, such as either or both an outdoor pool and indoor swimming facilities. That lies in the future, but right now, and particularly because we have very little in the south end of the township, the focus is on developing such facilities in the south end of the township.
Okay, Councilwoman Francois.
So has the Open Space Committee vetted this proposal and endorsed it?
Yes, and I believe you'll hear from the chairman of the Open Space Advisory Committee shortly. This, as I mentioned earlier, the concept plan for this park has gone through the Open Space Advisory Committee as well as the Recreation Advisory Committee, and both have recommended that, and I hesitate to use the word endorsed, but this plan with their input was developed and then went through that, and the recommendation of the advisory committee was to move forward. I believe you have just a report in your folders from our land preservation consultant, Fran Varicali, which details the minutes of that meeting that I believe, and not to steal Mr. Jones' thunder, I believe you'll hear him discuss the recommendations of open space.
I think that'll be good. Are we ready?
Okay, just,
Hear from him?
just quickly, Mr. Russo, on phase one, how close about does that come to anyone, a residence, and what is, if anything, in between what we would develop and the people? You know, like trees or, you know, that's part two, what's in between?
Mayor, that area of the
Please.
site is heavily wooded. The north and northwest, there's probably from the tennis courts or basketball courts over 200 feet to the property line.
Okay.
And then there's another on the adjacent property is heavily wooded, and there's actually a strip of land, I don't know if you can see there, which is almost 200 feet wide also, that's heavily wooded.
Okay, and the dark green is all wooded
It's
there
all-
under
yes.
phase one? Okay, thanks. So as always, as we see, we're balancing recreation needs of the town with the residents who are here. Okay, if the council will indulge, because it's not technically on the agenda, if perhaps we can hear from our open space chair and maybe a representative from Trails before we technically go to public discussion. So Mr. Randy Jones, our chairman of Open Space, do you want to go to the podium? There's a microphone there and you can address us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening,
Good
Council.
evening.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. Probably before I make a brief statement and comment on the Open Space Committee's evaluation of the plan and a motion that was passed on May 20th, as you know, when I have the opportunity to address Council and certainly the public, first I always like to say thank you. Thank you to the community of this township. Thank you to this Council. Thank you to our administration. The 34% of this town is preserved, and that's a major distinction. I heard somebody who traveled to Texas, and I want to verify this for myself, but it was someone here that's very high level in the environmental community said to me that in the state of Texas, there's no such thing. I shouldn't say no such thing, but there is no open space. Most of the land that's preserved is either private or in the federal government's hands that's being managed. So just the opportunity for individuals in the public and that you as taxpayers have put this money aside, as the township manager has mentioned, has really been a legacy that will be passed down to generations. And so I get this opportunity whether it's Yosemite, whether it's Central Park, or whether it's here in our own community, 10-mile run preserve, and just to know that this land will be here for generations to come, and this will be your legacy to the future. And I just want to say thank you that I have an opportunity to do that. Just briefly, I think the comments of the Open Space Committee in terms of its motion is somewhat in line with some of the comments that are here, and it reads as follows. The Open Space Advisory Committee recommends that the recreational development footprint for the Catalpa property be reduced, and in particular, encroachment on the area closest to 10 Mile Run be reduced. And I'll just stop for just a minute. That would be the Phase 3 area on the map. Specifically, we're kind of going under the assumption that the township manager has mentioned that the park be built in phases like Middlebush Park, and if the full park is to be built, that the farthest area by the bluffs in Bunker Hill Natural Area being last and the front part of the park being first. The committee would like to see if there is room for a community garden. The committee also recommended that the position of the baseball fields be evaluated for optimal position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor John Clyde, who is on our Trails Committee.
Mr. Mayor, let me first ask, is there anybody here from the Trails Committee tonight? Oh, very good. Okay. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the Trails Committee. We have somebody designated to do that. And Mayor, I want to thank you for your legendary courtesy, and I want to thank the council for listening to each other, and in advance for listening to the people of the community. I wear my USA Soccer shirt tonight because I love soccer. I love soccer because for 11 years I coached on the playing fields, not of Eton, but the playing fields of Sampson G. Smith School in youth recreation. We've got a great youth recreation program. I was on the city council with you, Mayor, 1999-2000 when this property was purchased. It was under imminent development pressure at the time. My recollection, and I granted it's been a long time, was that it was purchased on an expedited basis before the trust fund went in out of general obligation bonds, but I admit that I could possibly be wrong about that. And yes, it was targeted at that time in broad terms as being a southern park for Franklin Township. Now, a park means many things. And with regards to the concept plan, and I emphasize this is a concept proposal tonight that is subject to modification, and I think we've heard a lot of very, very good suggestions from everybody just about tonight on it. I have no problem really at all with the broad design of Phase 1. And as far as Phase 2 goes, it's a proposal for cricket fields. And if you've ever seen a cricket game, it's as bucolic as baseball was in 1868. It's a very low-intensity sport, doesn't bother anybody. A lot of people are playing it in the area, and it's a good thing. I want to turn my attention to Phase 3. Phase 3, the development of the recreation fields up against the bluffs, or closer to the bluffs, close to the stream, and in particular close to the residents along the Jellin Road and surrounding neighborhoods, is an overbuild. And I would find it inconsistent with at least what my ideas were back 15 years ago as to what this property should be like. So you have an opportunity to do something very special. You have an opportunity to work with the Board of Education and come up with a shared services agreement to bring two different governmental entities together to save the taxpayers some money and to save the neighborhoods. And I am very, very pleased that the manager and Councilman Kramer, Chase, and the whole council, all of you, are going to consider that idea. Again, it's a special opportunity to do something for the taxpayers and for the residents and also for the kids in the recreation department. And yeah, I mean, let's be real here. The current Board of Education, I don't follow it all that closely, but I know that they're having their issues right now. But don't let their current issues get in the way of doing what's right for the community. Thank you very much. Take Phase 3. out of it, put it over on Claremont, no lights. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there make an official presentation from the Trails Committee? And Mayor Claude, while she's coming up, just good point. I know you were mayor and on the council then. If this wasn't preserved, this very likely would have just been dense housing in people's backyard. At least it is open at this point. That's good reminder. Yeah.
Okay. Hi.
Name and position. And you can pull it up a little bit yourself.
My name is Nancy Cole. I'm the current chairperson for the Trails Advisory Committee. And at our last meeting, we discussed the proposal to this property. And it is the recommendation of the Trails Advisory Committee that the overall recreation and development footprint for the Catalpa property be reduced, and in particular, encroachment on the area closest to 10 Mile Run be reduced. And this is because if anybody's been over on that walking trail over there, it's absolutely beautiful, and it's just a really nice, peaceful, serene place to go. And we really want to keep it that way, as we do with all the trails that we have in the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's it for official presentations. We're going to get to the public discussion in one moment, and just a few points about that. This will be the only time...
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, Councilman Kramer? Oh.
We gave, in the interest of, this is not showing where I'm heading or anything, but the interest of balance, we had someone from Open Space and Trails. Perhaps we should have someone from...
Oh, yeah, excellent, excellent. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Keith Stewart, and I'm chairman of the Advisory Recreation Council. I've heard a lot of people and I guess their input as far as what goes in the park and what we need to go forward. The only thing I want to point out is I know that things have been floated as far as agreements that could be had, say, with the Board of Ed. I would just like to add, even if an agreement is made, I guess, with the Board of Ed, does that still, I guess, reconcile how woefully inadequate our current recreation is? If we do not have these fields and we have an agreement, that doesn't say that we will still be anywhere close to the negative balance of fields that we currently have. So because there's so much need for recreation, and whether it be soccer, cricket, football, trails, basketball, tennis, what have you, even if an agreement is made with a school that may be built at some point in the future, well, we'd still have residents in those areas that may say, we don't want this in our area, and yet and still, we still may not have, with both facilities, have met anywhere close to what the facility need is, considering the growth of the community. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's no one else official. Okay. So, oh, Councilman Chase?
I'd just like to respond to that there are certainly other possibilities. In some cases, land that doesn't belong to us yet, but there's some hope of acquiring. Whether or not we move these fields to Claremont Avenue, that doesn't stop looking for more places, for more recreation fields, and ideally places where there are not neighbors concerned about their immediate proximity. You know, this is not the end.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you. In a moment now, we're going to get to public discussion, where we'll hear what's on your mind. This will be the only time to speak of, during this meeting, to speak what's on your mind. Every meeting has a public discussion section. As per our ordinance in town here, when we have special meetings, especially largely populated, we ask your comments to be 2 minutes. That way we can hear what you have to say. We can hear as many people as we can. And you'll please come up to the podium, give us your name and address slowly. You can spell your last name if it's not extremely obvious. as is our policy, everyone can come up once per meeting. That way we hear from everyone. There's no yielding of time. Everyone just comes up, says what is on his or her mind. Please address all your comments to the council. If we can answer it, we certainly will. There'll be a timer, so if you speak beyond the 2 minutes, I'll ask you, please wrap up your thoughts so we can move on. And if, as just a general point, when we have these meetings here in Franklin, I am always very impressed, especially if it's controversial, that the public sticks to respect and decorum. And I must speak for my council members and say, council is always willing to listen to what you have to say and make a concerted decision. Okay, so is there a motion to open the meeting up for public discussion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion is carried. Meeting is open for public discussion. Now, usually, I'll ask you to raise your hand and come up, but since there's a lot of people, you can start to line up, and then we'll hear what you have to say. Mr. Dubofsky.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Wayne Dubofsky. I live at 27 Magellan Way in the Nob Hill section. Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to George Washington in May 1792, and he said, and I quote, "Deliberation is the function of many, action becomes the function of one, and always delay is more preferable to error." Ladies and gentlemen of the council, you have a property that you backloaded into deliberations. And I say that with all due respect, because what you have done is you are reviewing, dissecting, and looking at property which you inherited from your parents, and it is land that you will merely be borrowing from your children. Going forth, when you did your studies, you hired a company, Leisure Visions, which not only does polling inaccurately and at random samplings, which is not quantitatively accurate, because I did polling for 30 years, but also has a financial stake in any redevelopment and financial gain in property development, in building out parks. So I query the council to be very due diligent in the unintended consequences of who you hired to do your work. In addition, with all due deference and respect again, that poll had a plus or minus variable of 4% in a random sample. That is woefully statistically inaccurate and should have been higher in its random sample. And you never random sample a community unless you want the outcomes to be what the questions direct the outcomes to say. In essence, what you needed to do was to hire a polling firm that would do a legitimate poll. You did not. The commission, the advisory commission did not. They backloaded the storyline. And got the end result why we are all here today. It is based on erroneous information. Last point. There is a query in the assessment about stakeholders and shareholders being brought to the table. Society Hill 6, Nob Hill Homeowners Association was never invited to the table as an advisory group. Nobody will be more greatly impacted. So with all due deliberation, heed the words of Jefferson to Washington. Proceed very, very slowly. Your future of this community and the economics depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you. One little technical point, when you come to the microphone, keep yourself about 3 or 4 inches. That way we hear, and then our audio picks it up appropriately too. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Kerekes, Kerekes, 98 Magellan Way, Franklin Park, New Jersey. One of the items I'd like to bring up is that while we have all these committees and everything, there's also a master plan that you need to also follow. And I'm going to review, just briefly go through the review of the master plan in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element. And this is under the subheading Board of Education Facilities, with Mr. Chase, even Councilman Chase had discussed. The master plan calls out that the purchase of the 43.8-acre tract on Claremont Road for potential future school. For the master plan, and I quote, "Until the time the school is built, the Board of Education is willing, to arrange some type of use of the property with the township," end quote. The site is flat, adjacent, and this is my words, the site is flat, adjacent to a township road with access to both South Middlebush and Route 27. The installation, construction of soccer fields, baseball, softball fields, playgrounds, cricket fields is short money on such a site. Once again, per the Recreation Needs Assessment portion of the master plan, the master plan recommends, in quote, "The township should continue to work with the Board of Education to maximize all township facilities." In the Southern Community Park section, it says, "Another location was detailed in the master plan for a southern park, the land at the intersection of Sudam and South Middlebush Road." And the master plan clearly states, and I quote, "Concept plans, plural, should be prepared for both sites to determine which site is most appropriate for community recreation given existing vegetation, topography, and any development constraints such as poor soils or wetlands or opportunities for buffering from adjacent." I don't believe you actually followed that, and it was in your own master plan. And lastly, it had to do with lighted fields. I believe Councilwoman Francois had mentioned it. Per the master plan, the Parks and Recreation Department reported that there are no lit fields. The department also recommends, quote, "that they be installed in areas where there are no residences nearby in an effort to prevent complaints. One potential location should be near the new high school that is located on Elizabeth Avenue." And I'm going to conclude on the concept plan. And this is to Mr. Russo. At the top of Phase 3, what is the spot elevation? 157, I'll help you out on that one. Down here, what is it? It's going to be about 40 feet low. Okay? And that distance, that distance is approximately 2,000 square feet. I know you can do the math in your head. Once again, I'll assist. That is a 2% slope. Basically, at a 2% slope that is consistent through here for a soccer field of proportions that are used, being 130 feet in length and 210 feet in width. Because of that slope, soccer fields need to be flat. In order to get that existing grade flat, not including all the swales and dips and divots there, it would require the movement of 10,226 cubic yards. We don't know what that is. I'll give you an idea. One dump truck, 18 cubic yards.
Okay.
570 loads for one soccer field need to be moved.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marie Bodner, 20 Marco Polo Court. Okay, I just want to get off what I was going to speak about to follow up on what you're saying. This also brings another problem, not only bringing in the trucks with the dirt, if you're changing the topography, but how is that going to affect drainage in that area? I mean, you have homes all around. Are there storm sewers planned, retention basins, anything? So that's something the consultants may want to look into. Okay. The funding is coming from the Open Space Fund. Have you gotten a commitment, a firm commitment? Have they seen the plan and they said, yes, here is your $16 million? Or is this, well, so there is no firm commitment on this yet?
I don't want to take your time away because you get 2 minutes, but you just heard the open space chairman speak as the first
He's the
speaker,
council,
and
okay.
the ultimate decision on spending of
Okay.
any township funds is the body that you have in front of you, the town
Okay,
council.
I'll move on very quickly. The sewer line, it's going to connect right to the homeowner's line. All those homes, right? I mean, it's going.
There's
through
a
the
sewer line
property.
on that property already. We would just simply,
sewer-
connect
to the homeowners.
No,
Now-
not connect to the homeowners.
But it's
there's a
the same line
township
that they
sewage
share.
authority.
Are you sharing with the homeowners in that community, the sewer line?
I don't follow your question.
In other words, it's coming from the park. All right, I don't have the light, but
Ma'am, no more than any other home would. That's a main sewer line.
It's a sewer main that we would connect to.
But you are connecting a sewer line that could possibly, if you have a lot of people on those fields playing and people using that facility and these snack bars, whatever you may have there, all that sewage coming into a community with hundreds of homes, How is that, has that been?
Well, there's hundreds of homes on that sewer line, and that sewer line
But
it
it's
certainly
been-
has the capacity to handle the
We
restroom
know
in a
this,
park.
right? We know this. Have you gone to DEP
This
with
would,
this?
no, we don't, we go to the sewage authority who rates the capacity
You go
of
to
their
the
sewer line.
people. Okay, with that, I'd like to bring up, have you also met with the traffic department or with the fire department? You have one road going up? No, I'm just giving you safety.
I spent
He is the
13
traffic
years
department.
supervising the police traffic safety bureau in
Okay,
this town,
wonderful.
so I'm certainly
Then I
capable
just
of
have a
making that
question.
decision.
How do you allow to have one road going up to the park and one way back? There's only one way in and out of a park. How do you feel
That's,
that?
every one of our parks has one entrance in and one entrance out.
There are no
That's
other
common.
access? With 3 parking lots, there are no other access?
That's the access to the park.
One.
That's proposed.
What if there's an incident at that park during an event, a cricket match, or baseball game or something? How would emergency vehicles, and how would you evacuate a fire, anything?
Everyone, and what I'll tell you is, because again, I don't want to take away from the public's time, but every
No,
one of our
these are
parks has
important
one
because I'm talking
access
about
in and one access out.
So my,
That's fairly
okay, just
typical.
to, all right, just, I know my time is up, but just to round the whole thing up, my concern is about the sewer line and how that would impact the people who live in that neighborhood now. If there's too much drainage going in, also, where is the drainage for the storm sewers? You can't combine storm and sanitary. I believe that might be illegal.
Right.
All right, that's an important part. And then also, I think when you have discussions, you should bring in the Parks Department people, the Fire Department, and also the Transportation, because they have it's important that they
And-
also review these plans.
Okay, and you're right, especially when it goes to the planning, everyone will be brought in,
Right,
you're
thank you.
right.
And also, one
Police,
thing-
planning, recreation, environmental, et
Also, the
cetera.
money for park maintenance, who's going to maintain this park?
That's our open space trust fund.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Derek Franz. I'm from 28 Cartier Drive.
Pull the microphone up a little bit.
Sorry.
Pardon me.
Derek Franz, Cartier Drive, up at the top of the U of Cartier Drive. I wanted to point out the Councilman Chase had pointed to a 2009 study that was done to supplement the study that was done under the Princeton Carroll, or I'm not sure the name of the company. They had sent out mail surveys, 2,300 people within the regions of the 3 cited locations. They received a response of only 10%. 228 people altogether responded. Of that, they had indicated a 50% favorability towards it, so that amounts to 128 people said they wanted a park at Catalpa. I don't think that's really a fair assessment of, the number of people that are here. On top of that, the just general question of do you want to park in this area, 45 people responded yes. I'm not quite sure where the number is saying 95% for the other study that was done previous to this is indicating the, yes, that people really want this. I guess I just wanted to clarify where that comes from. In addition, one of the discrediting elements related to, I believe it was D&G, was it's a historic location, correct? Does anyone know the answer to that?
You said DNG?
The Dunn and Gunther.
I'm assuming you mean the Dunn property and the Gunther property.
That was determined to be historic, correct?
It is, yes.
According to the Historic Society, so is this. So I didn't know why that was discredited for being historic, but this is not.
The property there is not owned by us.
Hmm?
The home that sits on this property is not owned by the Township of Franklin. The homes on the Dunn and Gunther properties are.
Understood, but the survey, which had talked about the favoring of what site over another, discredited Don Gunther just on the sole premise of it being historic, but then this is not discredited. I also want to point out to some people who may not be aware, there was a study done a few years back that basically indicated that values of your homes could be decreased by park locations as far as open space versus parks. On properties that are adjacent to open space are considerably higher valued than ones with parks. And wanted to know if the council has considered the fact that you're going to be diminishing the values of homes on several communities surrounding this area just by putting up a park instead for what 45 people wanted.
Okay.
Just wanted to point that out.
All right, thank you.
Andrea Reese, R-I-E-S-E, 72 Magellan Way, Franklin Park. Thankfully, Councilman Chase got the ball rolling as far as negative aspects to the Phase 3, and I'm really here as kind of a representative of all the homes, all the homeowners, approximately 20 or so residents who live on Magellan, whose beautiful backyards face that open space as to what the impact would be. And I just want to let you know that as residents, we've paid extra money to live in those houses. We pay monthly maintenance fees to live in this specific development for upkeep, for maintenance, and above all, safety. Those of us who live on the perimeter in the townhouses and also on Magellan Way, we've paid, like I said, extra to have this beautiful view of the open space in our backyards where we watch the sunset. You might not realize this if you don't live there. It's peace and quiet. We have beautiful serenity, privacy, and safety with no fencing or barriers. We chose to live there for that reason. This is all about our quality of life. We have tons of windows on the back of all of our houses that face out onto that. And if we don't have that view, so we're looking out onto parking lots and bathrooms. And we now we've been suffering daily mental anguish, stress, and deprived sleep over all of this since May, since we got these letters, as to feeling like our whole quality of life is in an upheaval right now. Like we might have to think about moving. And you know, we're a real strong knit community here. So it's just something for you guys to think about when you're trying to squish in all of this in this overbuild, as somebody said. It's a gross overbuild that can easily be placed somewhere else, where you're taking away right now the nature and the beauty of this whole area, not to mention what it's doing to the environment and the animals and the whole habitat of the serenity of the whole ecosystem that's living there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Monica Hines, and I'm at 76 Magellan Way, and I wanted to basically piggyback off my neighbor. She's absolutely correct. I look out the back of my windows, and I see greenery. I see deer. At one time, maybe 15 years ago, I seen a goat. So, you know, it's serene, and I really I love living back there, and hopefully I can have my grandkids come over and they can enjoy that part of, I guess you consider the south part. But I do want to thank Rosalind Sherman and Mr. Chase for bringing up some important points. Yes, I do believe that Section 3 should not be built. That field, that is, as I would say, it's an overkill. Why in the world would you have so many fields and different things going on in the back? Not only that, you have the golf course, which is right adjacent. So when noise happens at the golf course, we do hear that. So if you do build something, build this park here, we're going to hear everything. Another concern I have, it's in reference to lighting. Now that confuses me. You say no lighting. So when dusk comes, you have 220 parking spots. Who's going to get those people out of there if there is a game? If there's no lighting, it starts to get dark. Then you have kids hanging around in the back, smoking and doing whatever they want to do. I'm not in agreement with that. That's a safety issue. Second issue I have, another issue I have is driving in. Now, they're going to be coming in off of, thank you. Not only that, they're going to be like, hey, let's go down this street right here, which is Magellan Way, which is a major thoroughfare for our neighbors. Let's go through there and see if we can cut across and get over here in this park here. That's what people are going to be thinking who are new to the neighborhood, okay? I really want you guys to think about what impact this has on this lovely Franklin Park community. I really want you to think about it, think about where we stand, and think about you living there, and how would you like it if somebody put something like that in your backyard. And my last point, because I know I'm running out of time, I did mint the buffer. 150 feet, well, I'm sure everybody knows what 150 feet, how long that is. 150 feet is nothing, okay? There's no space. And when you mention screening, screening is how much? How much is the screening? Screening is what? 500 feet, 1,000 feet from the 150 feet? Because there is, 150 feet is nothing. So we need for you to really consider and do away with this whole entire project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Carty. I live at 49 Champlain Way, which is about a block away from Phase 3. The proposed Catalpa Park is not a real park in the traditional sense of that word. The proposal seems more like a major sports complex with multiple ball fields for multiple sports. Much of the land in the proposal would be converted from forest land to grass ball fields and bring these ball fields right up to the backyards of many residents. There are flat open fields on the northwest corner of the intersection of Middlebush and Sudam Roads. It would be a much cheaper alternative to convert these flat open fields and would have much less traffic impact due to the traffic light that already exists there. Also, this site would not even come close to current residents due to the overall size of the open space that is there. There are many drawbacks to the current proposed plan, including its size and location. Using the open space on the northwest corner of the Middlebush and Sudam intersections would address some of those. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Robin Wallach, 46 Magellan Way. First, I find it very interesting that the tax assessors were going through Nob Hill this very day. Because I know it was because when if this park goes through, our taxes are going to be raised. We're already paying $11,000 in taxes on each of those properties. Your $3 million, we all know, will end up being $8 million or more in time of what it would cost to build this entire project. Another thing you didn't consider that I remember going back to when on the school board they wanted to put the high school on the southern part of the properties. At that time, it could not be done. They assessed anywheres in that region because of the wetlands. Now you want to propose putting a park there on wetlands that wasn't allowed for the school system to build in that area? I mean, this is crazy. Another thing that you haven't even considered of, because there are wetlands, if you even fill in shale wetlands, what does that mean? Okay? I've had 3.5 years of marine biology. I know what that means. You fill in any wetlands, it destroys a grass that is very important in keeping flooding in the area down. It's called Spartina. That grass holds in water. That grass holds in salts. That grass that you would destroy from any wetland, whether it be freshwater wetlands, saltwater wetlands, or whatever type of wetlands, if you destroy a wetland, no matter how large or how small, brings in flooding. Another thing you're not considering is this is the last vestige of actual forest land, because my house borders this forest land. I see from my house where the field, where that field is in the back in Nob Hill that we have there. I border there where the trees are on the side. We have all the wildlife coming out. What I get in one single day would astound you in wildlife. Okay? We get wild foxes. We have a mating pair.
Okay.
We have several birds.
Get on. Gotta ask you to wrap up. Okay.
Several birds and things. Okay? Hawks, owls, more than 30 species of wild birds of warblers, some rare animals, and there are even extinct species that are on the endangered list. The Sierra Club members are here tonight,
Right.
which means they would only be here in a
Okay, we
case
have-
where wildlife is threatened.
We want to hear from everyone. Thank you very much for the input. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, neighbors. Maureen Lamelza, 34 Cartier Drive. I'm not going to talk about Phase 3 because I think everybody kind of knows where people are standing there. My concern is I'm at the edge of Phase 2. And if we're talking so casually about filling in swales, that bottom swale overflows from that detention basin. My concern is it's going to end up in my backyard if we still start filling in swales. That detention basin's about 300 by 400 feet, I think, maybe 5 foot deep at the bottom. I actually have a picture I could share with you. When it overflows, it goes out the back, across that field. My other neighbors, Cartier Drive, can tell you. And I'm so worried that that's going to overflow into my backyard if you're talking about filling this in. So who's doing these studies legitimately to say that we're going to be protected and I'm not going to end up with a swamp? That's what I want to know. Who's going to, assure me I'm not going to end up with that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the point.
Hello, my name is Mary Patarace, A-R-A-C-E, 14 Gregory Lane. I have the same issue with the wetlands where the cricket fields are going to be, because when we got hit by Floyd, the only area that did not flood was our area at Somerset Hill 6. We are currently in a flood zone X as of the last, lookout. I don't know when the flood people were in here, whether it's changed. I'm on the first floor of a slab condo. There is no place for that water to go except for in my living room, which personally just has brand new laminated flooring. So I do not want that destroyed. I do not want my neighbors destroyed. I am concerned about the security of these fields. The cricket courts are right there. There's no buffer. There's no screening. No matter what spin you put on it, they're right there within 25 feet of us. The only screening I know of is what our association has put in, and that is all ours. So I don't think any of it's yours. So that is my concerns, and that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, council members. My name is Disha Ganapathy. Ganapathy. That's my last name. I am a resident of 4 Cartier Drive. I actually moved just 2 months ago, but I have lived in the Franklin Park neighborhood for about 6 years now. My husband and I routinely walk up to that place, take our walks. It's a beautiful place. There's a lot of talk about recreation, the word recreation. And I was actually getting curious, and I looked up. Recreation is really defined as an activity of leisure. And that doesn't necessarily, in my mind, translate to sports. In 2008, CNN Money Magazine voted our township as the 5th best place. And the preserved open spaces was a big factor in that. Henry David Thoreau says, in wilderness is the preservation of the world. Granted, this is not the Serengeti, but we've heard people come and speak about how they've seen wild animals come out, how people would love to just go out and see and just take a walk. And that's in New Jersey. We've seen enough people, we are seeing enough people, and I think we need some more open spaces to be preserved so that people can go and just have and enjoy some solitude. I see there are 2 cricket grounds. There were none, and suddenly there are 2. I'm not sure why we need 2 right there. Looks like the spectator group or the spectator stand is really not centered. And why can't we just live with 1, especially since the second one seems to be infringing on the wetlands? Somebody was kind enough to say it's a bucolic sport, it's quiet, but a lot of Indians play it, we're noisy. And I might be clubbed once I get out by my own folks, but I'm being truthful. I left India to come here to enjoy peace and quiet. I'd love to see more of those. Honestly, I would really, really want you to reconsider, because this kind of open spaces in the United States is one of the reasons I love this place. So I hope you can preserve it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Coleman. I'm at 17 Gregory Lane. I'm also in the building closest to that second cricket field. Not to reiterate again what Mary said, it's right there. It's very, very close to our building. There's really not that much screening. There is no buffer. And I wanted to propose perhaps redesigning a couple of other recreational areas. The Delar Park on Beekman currently has, I think, one softball field and a couple of basketball courts, and it looks like there may be room to maybe relocate a couple of these elements there. And there's a softball field on South Middlebush, if there's room to add something there and maybe reduce what's right up against our building. You know, I agree with having options for recreation, but that is very, very close to where our cars and our windows are. So if there's other areas that are already set aside for parks, if we could maybe put some of that stuff in those areas and redevelop what's already existing that is not so close to residential areas.
Okay, thank you.
Andy Dexter, 26 Cartier Drive. I could only really echo what a lot of people have said here, but the reason I came up is with all the talk of moving Phase 3, I'm sure there's some people leaving here with a half sigh of relief. I think this whole project is a mistake, and I hope they don't forget the effect of traffic and everything else that's been talked about tonight on this. Admittedly, I live by Phase 2, but to me, open space is open space. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Maureen Comar. I live in Columbus Drive, the other side of Middlebush Road. But I'm here and I'm wearing my brightest green because I want to make a statement to keep Franklin Park green. I was one of the people that voted for open space. I remember the first survey, and I said we really don't need anything. We're a very congested area, mainly townhouses, condos, and very small lots. But we have swimming pools, and we have a baseball field, and we have tennis courts. And to talk about the basketball court, at the very end, and Mr. Vornlacher must know that the very end of Columbus Drive has a basketball court. And he knows how many times the police have been called there. Just last night, at 10:30 at night, they were playing a pickup game. They're kids, they need a place. These are the kids that played there during the day that are finally adults now, and they know there's a basketball court there. So they come after the bars close at 3 o'clock in the morning. They come at 10 o'clock at night when there's nothing really good to do, and we listen to it. I could call the police. By the time they get there, it's gone. By 11 o'clock, they finished. But I wanted to watch the 10 o'clock news. I couldn't listen to it. I had my windows open, and I don't even live very close to the park. I live 3 buildings down. Will there be a gate at this park? Because, as you know, this is going to be a very long entrance. The other thing, how much are you already spending? I'd like to know how much money's been handed out for this project. It's not a park, it's a sports complex. What you did to the people on Charles Street and Van Gogh, whatever, it's shameful. You should be ashamed of yourself what you did to those people. I want to let you know about buffers. When the ShopRite Stop and Shop came in, they promised buffers. They planted trees. The trees died. There was a paper road. They paved the paper road to allow the trucks to go into the... This is important because these are the things that you don't know about.
I want to hear from
The
everyone
noise
here.
from the trucks no longer has a buffer. They said they came to an agreement to give our association some money so that we could plant the trees that died, so we would have some kind of buffering.
Okay.
However,
All right.
they didn't release
Thank-
the bond money, so we don't have the trees. And you know how long Stop and Shop has been there.
right. Thank
the
you.
other thing I
Thank-
want to say is
thanks for
nobody
the
wants a
input. I've
public
got it.
toilet in their backyard.
Okay. And just, it's obvious, as a reminder, if you want to email us or write to us, you can always put anything extra which you couldn't say. Voicemail? Yes, sir. Thanks.
Good evening. Joel Barman, 9 Rupert Drive. I don't live anywhere near this proposed development, although I have to say that the issues that have been raised would be very relevant to me if I did live on Magellan Way or Cartier or any of those streets. However, a topic that has not been addressed so far, and I'm a layman when it comes to reading site plans. I can't figure out what the status of Catalpa Farm is when I look at this, and nobody has addressed that. What is the status of Catalpa Farm?
I think that if you wait about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people behind you are Mr. and Mrs. Pachalik, who are in line, who I'm sure will talk to you about this and the fact that Catalpa Farm has been as preserved as it possibly could be. And I had a meeting with them today, so I'm sure that they'll give you an opportunity to hear what they have to say.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening. I'm Mike Golden, 32 Cartier Drive, and I'm just going to parrot some of the things that were said earlier. We have paid premium prices to have that view that now is going to be taken away. One of the things that concerns me, we were talking earlier about the cricket not being very loud, but it doesn't address the stands and the spectators. And from what was said earlier, this is from opening till closing. We have it totally booked out. So this is something we're going to be listening to throughout the day on our quiet weekends or quiet days. And personally speaking, it's very important, like my neighbor said, every storm, when we have that retention pond, when it overflows, it is a river running through that. And you cannot just divert or fill up without it going somewhere. And I certainly don't want it in my backyard or my basement. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sylvia Temmer. I live at 1 Butler Road, and it's on 23 acres, which are treed and which are immediately adjacent to this proposal. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for all the people who came out tonight, and also to the council for listening so patiently to all of us. I have written a letter to all of you and to all of the people on the Environmental Commission and the Open Space Committee and the Recreation Committee, and I don't remember what else. But I really would like you to pay attention to the letter. I have a couple of things in it. One paragraph, I said, science tells us that humans live longer and healthier lives if they exercise. The land for the proposed park now has some trails for recreational walks, but it seems to me a vastly better use of the land, even though it was outlined in the presentation, that trails would be improved. Right now, that land is so beautiful. It is so quiet. As so many people have said tonight, there are so many beautiful animals, birds. I believe there probably are some endangered species of turtle in the land, and I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about our running roughshod over environmental protection laws which now exist, and I'm terribly concerned about the number of parking places that have been outlined in this. That seems totally at odds with the idea that this is a park. It is not a park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Sandra Veras. I reside at 7 Gregory Lane. I'm in Society Hill 6. I began to feel like chopped liver because most of the concern was for Phase 3 of this park, and I am actually going to be affected by Phase 1. I would be, Phase 2, I'm sorry, I stand correct, it's Phase 2. I am going to be probably closest to the cricket courts, and that sort of concerns me. I'm also concerned about the fact that we're going to have more traffic than we have enough now in Franklin. I face South Middlebush Road. I watch the traffic on a daily basis, and it's out of control. I also get a scenic view of the dead deer on South Middlebush Road because we're overdeveloping in this township and we're building more condos and more homes. And the reason we might need a park is because we have too many condos and too many homes. It's time to stop. Please listen to all the people who came up this evening. Take it into serious consideration. I agree with the lady who said this is a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina Ulrich, 209 Wilson Road. I'm sure the council is very familiar with me because you've been seeing my face a lot at every single meeting in reference to what they did at Middlebush Park. I don't live near this proposed plan, but I do live near Middlebush Park, which is a sports complex. It is not a park. And every concern that every resident brought up tonight has happened to us already. So you should be concerned. You should be very concerned. It's already happened. So on the next note, what I wanted to say was we took a ride through Colonial Park yesterday and some of the other parks in the area, and it kept getting mentioned by recreation that we don't have enough recreation in this town, we don't have enough parks in this town. I have photographs that we took of all the parks. They were empty. There was no one in the tennis courts. This was a beautiful day yesterday. So tennis courts were empty. All the fields were empty. Now, I understand football is more of a fall sport, even though that was empty too. But it was empty. So I'm not really understanding why we need to add another park when the existing parks that we do have are not currently being used on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. In addition, Middlebush Sports Complex is not even finished being built yet. You're not even done with it yet, and you're already talking about adding something else. Why don't you take the time to see? Take the time to see. I mean, is it even going to be used to the extent before you start destroying more of Franklin Township? And I'm going to tell you, I took a picture of Franklin Township Preserved Open Space, the signs that are all over the town. And on the picture is a picture of trees. Okay? So I'm not understanding. I understand I have to wrap it up. I'm sure they'll be okay with this. There's a picture of trees on those signs. Well, according to what I'm hearing here, open space no longer is trees. It's paved parking lots. So, again, and I'll be back next week and the week after that. So, and I just want to say thank you very much to Councilman Sherman because you have been so supportive of the people in my area on Wilson Road. You've been so supportive, and I can't thank you enough for the support that you've given us. And if you didn't realize it, people in this room, she's on your side. Okay, she's on your side.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Brian Ulrich of 209 Wilson Road as well. And, you know, from what I heard before, I second everything that she said, but the parks, you said, were $15 to use. We're going to spend $6 million so you can save $15? Are you kidding me? $6 million, which Middlebush was 4, and it turned into 8.4. And you said the open space tax, you know, can be used for open space or recreation. Well, eventually that's going to run out of use because every square inch is going to be park. So eventually it's got to change. Right across the field there, isn't there a baseball field? Why do we need 2 more of them? It's never used.
It's owned by the homeowners association.
If you look at Google Earth, every single school has a baseball field or some sort of recreation in the back. Work a deal with the schools. it's evenly spread around the town. I'm sure we could use that money to spread it around the town a little bit better. You know, I'd also like to make the statement that somebody said we were voted number 5 best place to live in America by Money Magazine's best 100 places. We're living in the past, because in 2012 we were 25, which means we're going the wrong direction here. We're going the wrong direction. That means reverse course. And furthering what she said about the all these parks being built in the private sector, that's called market saturation. You need to slow down, see what happens, use it, see what happens. If it's booked solid, then think about a different place. It's not even done yet. I also, as a closing, you know, at the Middle Bush, we said how nobody here was affected by that. I printed out a map of everybody's houses here on the council, and it's amazing how evenly spaced away everyone is, that like you couldn't get any further away. And I'm going to leave that with you because it's the same for Middle Bush.
Okay.
I'll leave that with
Thank you.
I'm Evelyn, and this is Albert Pachalik. We live dead set in the center of Catalpa Park. We run Catalpa Farm for the last 30 years. I've lived there my entire life. I won't go into how long that is. We want to thank everyone for their comments tonight. I came up at the very end because I wanted to hear what the rest of the input was from my neighbors, who were not my neighbors many, many years ago. It's been truly edifying to listen to you and your feelings and your sentiments. To the council, I want to thank you for being mindful of the efforts my family has put into farming, to sharing our bounty with the people in the townhouses and having them walk up. It's been edifying when little girls come up and they go, gee, this is where vegetables come from? I mean, it's been educational for everybody in the area, and we hope that with the input from the folks here, that whatever you decide, you can come up with a good plan, and I don't envy you trying to do that. But I hope that you will buffer, screen, whatever, support us in hoping that we can continue to support agriculture in Franklin Township and especially Franklin Park.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Deborah Osman, OSMAN, 89 Emerson Road. I am not a resident of Franklin Park. I did grow up on South Middlebush Road. My parents bought land on Hilltop Lane when Society Hill was supposed to be a reservoir. So I grew up across the street from horses, down the street from cows, and I teach in this town. I took my kids to Bunker Hill as a science teacher, and we went hiking, and to take away that beauty, to see an indigo bunting for a spring dropout, it was migrating. You're going to ruin a lot of land, and this is what the public is saying. I'm also a member of the Pachalik's Farm, and to take that away and to have cricket fields in their backdrop, I don't think is the right thing. I did know Gunther Farms. I picked apples there growing up. And then we tried to make a compost on the other side of that. Is that land still ours? Can we make that into a cricket field? I do understand the need for cricket, and I respect it. The other sports, I feel like the town has enough. But I think we need to find another place to put the cricket fields. That's already a field. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Pat Dillon, and I live at 90 Magellan Way. That sanitary line that's been mentioned runs across my property, or actually on an easement there. So, but the one thing I wanted to talk about is a lot of the concerns that I have been shared tonight. So I kind of wanted to appeal a little bit to your emotional side. And, You know, when I look at the design, I'm someone that was a soccer coach. I coached my daughter's team for over 10 years, and I understand the value of soccer fields. I mean, there were times when we struggled to get a field, and at the time, Middlebush Park was a godsend. It doesn't look anything like it does now. Back then, it was just fields. I went up and lined them myself for the team. But the complex that's being proposed here, when I look at that plan, I look at a plan that someone designed that doesn't like families, that doesn't like homeowners, and doesn't really care about what they do. To the tranquility of your home. And as was shared earlier, we did spend extra money to have that lot. Now, granted, we always knew there was a chance that something could be built there, but we never perceived a design where it is so over-designed and over proposed that you couldn't shoehorn another water fountain into. Never imagined that at all. There isn't an adequate buffer or screening available to keep the noise down from a soccer game. Just one. We're looking at 3. Literally in our backyards. So, I mean, I appreciate the thought that, hey, we're gonna put in some additional shrubs and trees, and we're gonna try to protect the homeowners from what they can see. But the noise is just, it's not gonna stop it. The other thing is, when you see that, I know every politician wants to feel trusted, but when you see that, you go, wait a minute, they don't necessarily have our best interest at heart. Right? That makes us feel like maybe we're not cared for. Thanks, Brian. All right, and so when I know they said that the comment was made that there would be no lights, there would be no sound system, it's hard to believe that in the future that would still be true.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dillon.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. I'm Robert Moss, M-O-S-S. I do live in Bloomfield. I'm here on behalf of the New Jersey chapter of the Sierra Club. Let me just say, we are actually not white knights all the time. We'd like to be. And we do show up when something other than species is at stake. I was interested in that remark. But the chapter, the club nationally is concerned generally with a sustainable planet, and that covers almost everything, pollution, open space, and so on. Everything's been covered. I do hope to be able to send some detailed comments by email. I just want to make a couple remarks. When I looked at the plans, and I haven't, I forget if I said this, I haven't been able to find anything on the internet. I haven't been able to get a hold of these plans. I haven't been able to see them tonight. So I could have been perhaps more prepared. But when I first saw that plan up there, my first thought was Union City. This is something you might need in Union City, and they have had issues that I've been involved in with recreational fields and professional-style fields in public parks there. So that was my first reaction. The chapter is opposed to the plan as it stands with all 3 phases. As far as Phase 1 and/or Phase 2, the chapter is not taking a position tonight. Doesn't mean we're in favor of them. And I think that's all I have. I do hope to be working with the opponents as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting us speak tonight. I'm Randy Belinsky. I live at 108 Magellan Way. And I moved here in 1990. I was one of the original owners, and I came from overcrowded Woodbridge Township, where the same kind of building went on in Edison Township, Woodbridge Township, where it used to be. My family moved here in the 50s when there wasn't even Menlo Park, and I understand that there's growth and development and there's need for recreation. I'm the social worker of the group, so I want to appeal to your hearts, and I want you to really thoughtfully think this out. It is a beautiful area. I have loved living there. I feel safe. The stress that we're all under is so tremendous that we're just going to be overcrowded in our whole area, that there's not going to be anything around our homes without just development. I'm so concerned about the noise, the flooding. I've seen my neighbors homes where their basements have been flooded and everything's on the sidewalk. And I just want you to carefully, I know Mr. Walsh, Chase, brought up some great ideas, that there are other areas to please carefully consider that and look to your hearts and listen to our hearts. And we're really, really upset about it. It's not something that we're welcoming in that area. And even as a social worker, I understand the kids need for recreation, but there's got to be able to be some kind of compromise. It doesn't seem that this area, from everything you've heard, is what needs to be developed any further. I think it's just beautiful with the animals, and I just think we need some peace. We've been great taxpayers, and all of us that live in Franklin Park have loved being there. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. It's my neighbor. My name is Bert Coudrier. I live at 102 Magellan Way. Everybody has been so great tonight. I want to say I just appreciate, especially the Middlebush Park people coming up here. It's actually nice to get that forewarning. I just want to add a couple of things to what people have been saying. One thing is access to, obviously, Phase 3. I know, I think it's called Seeley's Run. It's that road behind Sampson. So people just park on that road and walk to the soccer fields. And it's funny, everybody looks at something different. I look at this and I see a ton of people parking on Magellan Way, walking through people's yards to get to a field. And that's bad. I mean, that's just not, there's a lot of things wrong with that, especially if we talk about dusk till dawn and that kind of stuff. So I won't go into any detail, but if you're going to plan on screening and what is it called, buffer and all that kind of stuff, I think you may have to think about something else, or you're going to get a lot of calls to the police for trespassing and stuff like that. And the second thing, so I did my homework. I walked the Brown Trail. So who knows what the Brown Trail is? Okay, excellent. If you've never walked it and you're responsible for voting and a decision, you need to walk it. That's your homework, all right? And I just wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate the process.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name's Carlo Canestri. I'm at 88 Magellan Way. That's Canestri, C-A-N-E-S-T-R-I. I'm on the board at the Nob Hill Homeowners Association. I just want you all to know that I have about approximately 200 signatures on a petition that is against the park. I would like to thank all the people who helped to get these signatures. I know it wasn't easy knocking on doors. A lot of people don't like to knock on doors. A lot of people don't like to even answer their doors. So it's amazing that we got this many signatures on a very busy weekend. A lot of people seem to be on vacation. I'm going to tell you that I believe there'd be 25% more people in this room today if this wasn't 4th of July week. So I see a lot of people, and I've heard all the issues. Well, you never hear everything, I guess, but we did hear a lot tonight. I don't want to just go over the same things over and over again, but my community, our community, Nob Hill community specifically, is very, very concerned about the things that we've all mentioned: security, possibility of lights, noise, trash, EMS, getting to the site. These are all concerns. I don't want people to think that, oh, it's going to be, an easy park to get to, and that people will be able to find that access on Ovaleat Road. I think a lot of people will be looking at their GPS or getting directions from someone and coming down Magellan, maybe speeding to the games to let their son or daughter out to run through the parks, to the parks through the people's properties. And I don't want to see that happen. And I know that would be an issue for all of us on Magellan. So if you all want to take a look at these petitions, you're welcome to. And I think that there's going to be more people that may want to sign on the way out. So, if you do want to sign on the way out, I'll be out in the lobby, okay? So you could see me, all right? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Canestri, when you're done, pardon me, when you're done with the petition, you could give it to our clerk, Ms. McCarthy, or hand it to our office, and she'll let us see it. Thank you, sir. Pardon me.
Hi, Gail Newman, 2 Conservancy Court, and the only quiet sport is chess. When I believe it was Mr. Chase mentioned Conservancy Court, please don't think that Phase 3 is good on Claremont, because now you back up onto all those single families. We have traffic, we have people speeding down the roads looking for shortcuts off of South Middlebush to South Middlebush. That light is not very helpful. I don't hear anything being said about the traffic and how South Middlebush will handle it, Butler, how that will handle it. It's a complex. I live, in fact, Lieutenant Vornlocker, I think used to be, we talked an awful lot. I can hear my neighbors in the townhomes at 8 o'clock in the morning from my deck, and that's more than 200 feet, and a wooded area. It's very quiet right now. I can hear my neighbors at the other end. We only heard about any of this because we were notified when the Board of Ed wanted to come in and do something with the end of that road with the farm. It's a dead end right now. It's quiet. It's safe for the kids. Plenty of people walk, dogs, strollers, run. And I realize this is a Magellan area, and my heart does go out to you, but I don't want you to think that that those of us in the town and country estates, those single families, that putting Phase 3 there is going to solve the problem. The whole area, as everybody said, is very overpopulated. It is too small to handle these extra people. Everything everybody said, please consider. I'm feeling none of you live in that area. I live off an easement. I have ATVs speeding down there on the weekend. I have people playing in the easement. The open space budget, it pays to maintain, but it doesn't pay for salaries and the pensions of those people you're going to have to hire. I've called the police several times on the easement. This is just going to happen if you do it to Conservancy. Are you going to take my dead end and now make it a through street? When we have company, and there's several of us who have 20, 25 cars, I can't get out of my driveway. I'm going to wrap it up, yes. I can't get in and out of my driveway because they're parking on both sides. It's barely wide enough to have that third car drive in and out. You're going to take away my dead end, my quiet, my non-straight through area to 27? Are we eventually going to look like 27? It's a complex. It's not a park. It's a farm. It's not a park.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Srini Valluri, Vallury, and I live in 4 Cartier Drive. I'm an EMT from Kendall Park First Aid Squad. We are 100% volunteer organization. And for some of you who don't know, Franklin Park EMS doesn't support our part of Township. Like we depend on Kendall Park. Whenever we get a call, I run to my Kendall Park building, and we come from there to support, to help people out from Franklin Park. Now, if we have many other issues we have where we can improve EMS squad members or something like that, why are we doing this one? Now, there are many ways to stop from youngsters killing each other. You can improve your library, what we have in Franklin Park, or there are many other ways we can make sure that people don't kill each other.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael Kunst, 148 Butler Road. I have 2 points. I've never seen the plan until tonight, and I was a little shocked to see the scope of the plan, the size of the park. This is all natural, environmentally sensitive areas. You're about to put mowed lawns, pesticides, fertilizers, take away trees that are going to affect flooding and other runoff, and all that goes into the stream that butts up to all this property. And the people who have homes there, I understand their concerns and the noise and everything that comes along with that. The second point is Old Villette is a narrow road. I don't know if all of you have driven it. It's a 1-lane road at best. I live on Butler. It's a 2-lane road supposedly, but Cars do bump each other, they go off the edges. Those roads cannot handle, I forget how many you said, 250 cars that potentially, 400 cars that potentially are going to be on Ovalette trying to get to Middlebush. They're going to try to get to Butler. They're going to try to get to Canal Road. It's too densely populated of an area to fit what you guys have shoehorned into an environmentally sensitive area that just doesn't belong in this area.
Okay, thank you. Anyone who hasn't spoken would like to address us?
Mr. Mayor, upon seeing no hand go up or anyone walking up, I make a motion to close the public,
Oh.
I guess, no.
No, sorry.
Close
I'll see one.
the public portion.
But next time. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion is carried. Okay, so public discussion is closed. So, motion or discussion further?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilman Kramer?
So concerns about drainage. Educate me about drainage or
With any development, we'd have to meet the New Jersey stormwater management regulations, which would require us to reduce the quantity of runoff, improve the quality of runoff, and increase infiltration. So we'd have to meet those conditions. We haven't got into that design yet because it's just a concept phase at this point.
So let's say we, phase 3 wasn't there. I'm thinking mainly about phase 2, and I had talked about the swale. What's there versus what we're putting there is drainage. Let's say we leave the cricket courts as you have it. Excuse me.
Okay, it's,
I'm more on your side than you think I am, and that isn't helping, to be honest. So I'm trying to figure things out. I have a whole town to serve, and I'm trying to serve you as best I can. So please, let me ask my question. So with the cricket courts, how does that change the drainage? Now, I mean, I understand you haven't done calculations, but I don't know what's there now versus what's going to be there. I mean, this is permeable surface, and I assume there's permeable now. So how does that change things?
Well, I think the cricket fields themselves will not change the drainage because they're going to be grass. Obviously, there'll be an increase with impervious surface such as the parking area, but we'd have to manage that with some type of stormwater management system, either an open basin or underground detention.
We have to follow up to that. A question to follow up.
Deputy Mayor Regan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, sorry. So help me understand what would be an example, like you've heard the concerns, the drainage. So if you were to be able to meet the requirements, what's in it without, I understand it's not a detailed design document, but like what would you do with it? Like where would it go?
Well, like any development, we'd prepare a stormwater management plan.
Right.
Where we either have an underground detention system, which would store the water and meter it out, or if there was area for us to design it, it would actually be less expensive. You can do an open basin, which you see around developments.
So in this conceptual plan, there is, in the conceptual plan, you didn't allocate a basin or anything for that? Because
No.
it's just that, a conceptual plan.
It's just
And I don't
a-
mean that in any negative way. I mean, it's a high-level conceptual plan.
That's correct.
So if you were to do, if in this plan, a basin was needed, then that would obviously impact the current layout, and there would be some adjustment somewhere along the line.
Unless we went with an underground detention
Or
system.
the underground, which you would have to figure out how deep and wide to make that to hold the volume, because you would come up with some calculation to figure out what's the volume of the runoff you would need that would be stored. Then that would then be filtered down through various type of rock or sediment so that it filters down into the deep
That
ground.
would be done during the design phase.
And that would be done in the design. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor.
Oh, okay.
I had yielded to
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Regan, so.
Thank you, Councilman Craig.
Kramer, then we'll go to.
But I am sensitive. I believe the gentleman, maybe in the blue shirt over there, talked about trust of government. And I think the people at Middle Bush Park are sensitive to that now, at the very least. Initially, there was no talk of a sound system. Now there's a sound system. And I can absolutely tell you in my heart, I have no plans whatsoever of sound or lights, but I understand. I mean, basically this country was born on not trusting government. There's little more American than not trusting government. So I am sensitive to that. I understand your worries. And I think the first speaker spoke about the founders, and I am very sensitive to that. So, all right, I yield, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a little bit of deja vu. These are the kinds of comments we all heard from the people surrounding Middle Bush Park. You're fortunate in the sense that you are benefiting from the fact that we are becoming more sensitized to what we have done to people's quality of life. But unfortunately, they are paying for it. But I just wanted to do that little bit of an introduction. My feeling about all of this was some of the words that were said here. We need to make sure that we actually do need all of these fields. I've had that feeling myself, that maybe some of the things that were proposed in this original plan were too much. It was a time when we were just trying to do everything we could to help our youth. And I'm still there. I want to help them. And if there's a need, we need to make sure that we are meeting that need. I don't know that the need is real at this point. I do feel we need to, some things were said that I think need more analysis. Do we really need all of the parks? What is the current usage of the parks that we have? Before we jump into, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate, I'm trying to help, but I'm also, I'm on both sides. I want to make sure the kids are taken care of, and I want to make sure we don't do something that's unnecessary. So I think if we could slow down a little bit and maybe wait and do some more analysis, are we sure? I know Councilman Kramer can probably answer this better, and perhaps he can answer after I'm done. The validity of the polling that was done. I want to make sure we have the right information. I want to make sure that there was some discussion at one time about working some deals with the schools. They were not receptive. Maybe they'd be more receptive today. Times change. Are there other locations we can move some of these to? The narrowness of some of the streets needs to be clearly delineated. We have people walking through backs of homes around Middle Bush Park. We have people who need to have more shielding. Some houses are totally exposed. That is not going to happen again. We made a big mistake the first time, and again, you're benefiting from that. When I hear someone saying that kids are playing on their basketball courts at 10:30 at night, I know we have security. I know police go through the parks, and it's an effort to keep it. They're going to do that at Middle Bush, and in order for it not to become a hangout for the kids, but they can't be there all the time. There may be some cameras. Were we talking about some security with cameras? No.
This is still concept,
Okay.
Councilwoman.
I hear you.
This is very high level, so no, there hasn't been any discussion about that. And just a remark on one comment that you just made about a former member of the public who spoke. The basketball court on Columbus Drive is not a public park. That is part of a private homeowners association and not one of our public parks. Not to say that the police department don't have a responsibility to patrol that, but the rules established for things like basketball courts or tennis courts in private homeowners associations are rules that are enforced by that homeowners association.
I hear you, and that's fine. When it's our park, then it's up to us to to make sure that those rules are enforced, and I just want to make sure people are comfortable that there's going to be a plan that will take care of all of that. I just want to make sure that we are not, as we did with Middle Bush Park, running too fast. I want to make sure that the need is real, and that if indeed it is not, then we need to alter some of our plans. There is no reason that we have to do this today. I think we need to do a little bit more analysis, and we need to look at some of the things that you've talked about. Now, if it proves that we can do this, we will do. I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm going to say do it, but do it the right way. And if that can be done in a way that will satisfy your needs as well as the needs of the children, I'm all for it. But we need to make sure that the residents are comfortable with what's coming. And that we did not do in Middle Bush Park, and I truly hope we don't do it to you. Thank you.
Councilman Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After hearing all of you, I think we need to reevaluate all three options. And the Dunn and Gunther fields, they're agricultural fields, they're open. We're not impacting any habitats as such or quality of life. And they may be the ones that would be ideal to look at for some of these proposed uses. And one of the things that I see in Colonial Park is there is a nature trail. And I was on the train one time from New York, and I saw this guy with a bike folded up, and I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to Franklin. And he loved our trails, and he rode the trails. And so it is a destination, and we need to preserve it. So from that perspective, we need to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate what our options are with minimal impact. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pull back into history a little bit with Middle Bush Park. And this goes back about 10 years, I guess. There's a skate park there, and I'm not against skate parks. I think they're good. But my point at the time was, I don't think we should drop a skate park there till we know what the whole park's going to look like. That's almost beside the point for Middle Bush. So over here, phase one isn't too intense, but perhaps we should know what the whole park is going to look like, if anything, before we commit to any piece of it. And people make up, you make obviously good points, and as hopefully you'll see we're open to ideas, even if we disagree sometimes. As our manager said to the group last time, this is our democracy in action. We had a special meeting just for this so we could hear from you. So much has been said by yourselves and my colleagues, so I won't belabor it at this point. Councilman Chase and then Councilman Kramer, you were going to go again? Okay.
I could make comments or ask Mr. Russo some questions about details, such as, for instance, why are the parking lots as large as they are? But I don't think that's what you want to hear tonight. As far as I'm concerned, Phase 3 is completely off the table and just cannot be done. And I stand with Councilwoman Sherman in saying I think we should re-examine the need, at least for Phase 1. As I say, I still think there's a need for cricket fields, but again, there may be a better place to put them. There may be a better place to put soccer fields. We've talked about Claremont Road. We've talked about the Dunn property, although Rebecca White Johnson, who lives on Gristmill Lane and out Saddam, informed me of the difficulty of turning left at that light when they don't have a protected light, and was concerned about that as a factor for the Dunn Field property. But I think Given the essentially unanimous position of the audience tonight, I think we need to back way off and re-examine the need and the locations.
Okay. Councilman Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I came here after being, the liaison to trails, and Mr. Thank you, Mayor Clyde, a very good friend of mine, even though I can't remember his name, had brought up, he actually said the words, "This is an overbuild." So I came here with as open mind as possible, but basically feeling Phase 3 was not in the best interest. And actually, I have to compliment the people here. The speaker who talked about the cubic footage and the slope, that was impressive. I do want to...
I leaned over and said, he's right.
And that was impressive, too. So, in my mind, Phase 3 is, as said, off the table. The Dunn and Gunther farm, and you'll hear me talk on both sides of the question and ask on both sides, because I really try to understand things. The Dunn and Gunther farm is not as easy as you think. The manager and I were recently inspecting that for another purpose, and we came back, it was at least a week after a rain, and we had to change our clothes afterwards. We were soaked and muddy. There were some streams back there, and we eventually just started walking through the streams because we were so wet it wasn't going to make a difference. So they're not necessarily an easy solution. And there are houses around there too, and I don't like pushing not in my backyard to not in someone else's backyard. I do believe there is a need. We spent a lot of money on studies. I do believe there's a need, and I want to get together with the gentleman who spoke about statistics. It was my understanding this was a good study, but if he's a 30-year professional in it, that's an opportunity for me to learn. So Phase 3 is done. Phase 2, I would like to see some cricket fields. Perhaps we need to discuss whether both fields are necessary. I would have liked to have moved the smaller cricket field away, but I have to see what that does to drainage. So Phase 2 has some considerations. And then Phase 1, some of that parking can be smaller and facilities could be smaller. So again, well, I don't have to say anything again. I think I've said it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And as I'll interject also, as been alluded to, about working with others. And I think in Franklin, we generally work well with others. We're a little bit of an advantage because we're a large town, so with staff, we have a lot of shared services. Downfall of New Jersey is the strength and the downfall. One of them is all the many 565 towns and almost 600 school districts, and we've got thousands of little governments within our state. And we have to make an effort to coordinate, so I think that's what we've got to double down on with the Board of Education and with Somerset County. Both have good resources and good intentions, and we've got to work with them also. That's kind of been brought up, and that's a good point also. So from the council, any other motions, discussions?
Yeah, can I just say something?
Yeah, Councilman Wright, please.
I'm sitting here on the corner, and everyone spoke real well out there. But I just have one little comment, and it's not thrown out at anybody. I heard everyone said the deer and the antelope, and they used to play and run up and down, and all the birds and everything. I just have one thing, and I want you to think about. When the homeowners association, whoever built your house, when they built your house, You move the animals to another location. You move the birds to another location. So please, when you come up and you say, we're going to destroy the habitat, you've already destroyed it when you put your house there. You didn't build it,
Okay,
but you put it there.
Councilman Wright has the floor. We're all respectful. Okay. Okay. From the council. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
come on now. Let's be
Council discussion.
respectful.
Okay. From the council, is there more? Councilwoman Francois.
I've sat through a lot of these public hearings, special council meetings, and heard from the public. I think this is the first time in my tenure that we've had a special meeting and not one person came up here and said, oh, we really want to have this park. This is unbelievable to me. So we really need to hear from you and listen to what you're saying. And you said it best, took the words out of my mouth. On my way over here, I was talking to the township manager, and I said to him, why are we talking about another park when we haven't even finished frickin' South Middlebush Park? I don't get it. So, I know this is a concept phase. I know we have needs, but we're moving too fast here. And we need to, as the councilwoman said, really understand what the need is. Just because we commissioned a study and we spend some money on a study doesn't mean we have to move forward if we don't feel it's the best way to go. And I think it's good that we have decided we're going to take phase 3 off the table, but it worries me that we're sitting here as a governing body talking about concepts when we don't have all of our ducks lined up in a row. So I apologize.
And I'm going to interject one more time. And we're, again, you see, it was just an overview plan. None of the details was really being done. I think we would be remiss if we didn't think about things within the town. If it turns out it's not a good concept, so we'll move on. But to look at things as they are, how they might be, is part of our job, I think. So then we have this idea, we open it to the public, and you give us your opinion, and then we move on. There's been a lot of times in this town where we've had concepts just because it may have been a good idea, and the public said yes or no, and if it was no, then we moved on. And this may be another one of those, or there might be certainly something in between. So, again, as you know, nothing being thrust down anyone's throat, just a good concept. And I'll thank the engineers. Please don't blame them. They are given the assignment, and they do what they can with it. So we appreciate the hard work, and certainly our town engineer and our recreation person too. Okay, I can't take anything from the public, from the council. Motions, comments?
Motion to close the meeting? To adjourn?
Seconded.
Point of order.
Councilman Kramer.
So we are leaving the manager with no direction. I am not arguing,
That's-
I'm not arguing with that,
No,
yes
no,
or no.
no.
I'm just making it clear to council.
That is a good point. We are
Right.
proactively not doing direction if we adjourn.
Right.
And-
You are, and I only caution council that if you give me no direction tonight, then no direction will be taken at all. And if your desire is for this to be investigated further, then I need your direction on that tonight to do that.
Mr.
Mayor.
Several suggestions made here, and we have, well, and just to complete my thought here, one of the things that was stated here tonight is that we need to investigate more the need that this township has for active recreation. And you commissioned a study that was completed only about a year and a half ago that very in a very detailed way identifies the recreational needs. And if we're not going to follow that study, then that might be the direction you give me tonight. But we need some direction for me to give staff on how to proceed, because this particular park has been through all of your standing committees. So I need some direction on where I will go with this.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, then Councilwoman Sherman.
So I think, good point, we weren't given direction. So I think at this point, logically, we should have, I think we should give direction to one of our subcommittees to work with the township manager and whoever he delegates that's appropriate to have a meeting to process the feedback that came from this meeting, taking it all into account, and then coming up with either a proposal to council or a recommendation or just a readout to the full council that says, hey, this is kind of what we heard about the park, and relative to the study, because there is a study, and this study, we need to figure out what portion of that study turns into a reality. Some of it, none of it, all of it. Obviously, it's not going to be all of it. So that's where I think we should go. I think we should turn this back to the land use committee to meet with the township manager, and then probably not at the next council meeting, but in the August or the September council meeting, just to give a readout. Not even saying what a proposal is, because I know sometimes people will take that word proposal that we're trying to do something, and it really is just a readout from this meeting.
Okay, Councilwoman Sherman, then Councilman.
Thank you. To some degree, that would have been what I would have recommended. We're not saying this is over. We're saying we need to regroup and we need to look at the issues that were brought up here. The only caveat I would have to what the deputy mayor said is I am not on land use, but I have a lot of issues here. I think all the issues from any council person should be directed to that committee, and they are responsible to get back to us with the answers, which we didn't do the last time. We just allowed certain committees to run with it, not this time. We all need to know what's going on, and we need to be part of it.
And that's why I said really focused on readout, not a recommendation or not a proposal.
Right. But we all need to be part of it.
Yes.
Okay, but Councilman Chase, Councilman Kramer.
I wanted to really comment on what the manager of Warnlocker said about the study we've just had done, and how it doesn't match with what we heard tonight. And it may be that this area doesn't need a park or would not use the kind of facilities that we described here. We're describing the kind of facilities that are generally thought of by recreation advisory firms. And in other parts of the township, they may be much more needed. The kind of youth that Councilwoman Sherman spoke about, the kind of youth that apparently are playing on the basketball field at the end of court at the end of Columbus Avenue at 10:30 at night, which indicates some sort of need. But that by and large, this community, basically most of the people we heard from today are from Nob Hill, doesn't feel the need of a park there. And that's why we need to maybe think more about where we do need a park. Even if overall, on the basis of statistics and comparisons and so forth, even if overall we do need more playing fields, maybe this isn't the place.
Okay. Councilman Kramer, then Councilman Prasad.
So my concern, as it was last time with Middlebush Park, is how do we let these good people know when next this will be discussed in public? I mean, there was a sign placed. We could, even though there's no longer a requirement to put a sign, we could put something there. We could put something prominent on the website, but there's the website they could sign up for. But I'm not suggesting a mailing, but I would like it clear to the people here when we're going to next discuss this so that they don't have to wonder.
And for the pub, that's a very good point. Our website is actually very good, and you can usually, this is a special meeting. Usually our meetings are the second and fourth Tuesdays in the month, exception being July and August, and December it's only the second Tuesday. Usually the weekend before, you can see the agenda that's coming up. And if you look at that, there's a section called council discussion items. That's usually where you'll see it, because odds are we're probably going to discuss it before we would introduce anything. So take a look at the agendas like that, just bring it up, and if you can sign up on the websites for email alerts, it'll tell you, but that's probably a good place. We can certainly put on the property, we will. And if it's not there, and you're by the building, we'll usually have an agenda. You can come in for that too.
I just wanted to, relative to the point Councilman Kramer brought up. So that's why I used the word readout, because unfortunately, we are now in this vicious cycle of the people in Middle Bush Park coming every week to hear something that generally wasn't on the item. There was no plan to talk about it, and they talk about it because they're exercising their free right. So that's why I used the word readout. I don't think anything should be, if we are going to take some action, that should be announced at a meeting that there will be some action taken out. But hearing a readout, in my mind, is no taking action, because at this point, I think we are months away from having any sort of, plan to offer, if there is going to be one offered. So that's why, like, in my mind, it's like, hey, there's going to be no action taken on this park until we get a sense of, feedback from the committee. So that's why I use the word readout, because that doesn't imply that there's a proposal coming back or a proposed plan.
So my point on this is the reason people in Middlebush keep coming back is because there's no promise of notification when we're going to do something. I welcome you all back, but my thought would be they need not come back if they felt confident that anytime there's going to be something on this, they will have notification. And I understand the manager whispered to me that, tell them what you whispered to me.
I'll let you know my little secret. No, the process that took place here tonight involved a mailing to all property owners within 200 feet of the property lines of our park. That's part of the notification process when we look to change the use of a property that's on our open space inventory, and that was followed here. And so many of the people seated behind me should have received notice through the mail that we were going to have this special meeting to talk about a change in use of this property. So,
How much in advance are those mailings?
I
know it was 45 days, 30
it
days.
was 30 days in advance.
So there would be, if we were to do anything of substance, maybe not a readout, but if we were to do anything of substance, there would be a mailing, and I would ask that the same place where there was a sign, that we put some notification there.
And so what my interpretation, and I keep calling for people to correct me if I'm wrong, and no one's done it yet, so I'm going to do it again right now. My interpretation of the Green Acres regulations is that whenever there is a meeting to propose a change in use of an open space property, that we need to make that notification and post the sign as we did prior to this meeting.
Okay.
So if council has chosen tonight to put this back to committee, that means no decision was made here tonight. So my thought is, when we choose, and it could be at a regular council meeting, when we choose to make a decision on a change in use of this property, that we would need to follow those same rules per Green Acres that we followed tonight. So yes, there would be a 200-foot notice by mail, and we would post the sign with the proposed date. It could just be a regular council meeting, but we would still follow those regulations.
So those people within 200 feet are the canaries that will let the rest know. The sign will also be up.
And based on the addresses I heard tonight, I would say that the overwhelming majority of those who spoke tonight are within 200 feet of our property.
And I do, implore people to look on the website at our agendas to see if there's anything about this park on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman Prasad's been patient, then back to Councilman Chase?
No, I mean, in terms of direction to the manager, I think I was pretty clear that, we need to go back to the drawing board and look at the pros and cons of all the options and then come back with a recommendation to land use and everybody else.
I understand that, Councilman. I take my direction from you as a body. That's why
Right.
I said it, and
Yeah.
and that's what I'm looking for.
But that's where we
law
are.
says.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilman Chase? Please.
I just wanted to comment on the notification that Councilman Kramer was talking about. I know we have a section in the upper right-hand part of the website for special notices if we're going to close a road or something like that. I would say that at whatever meeting we have the readout that Councilman Regan has proposed, that we put a notice up there. We're not just asking people to delve through the proposed agenda of a meeting, but to put up a positive notice that further committee report on Catalpa will be at such and such meeting, and that should be easier to find. And maybe also the gentleman that was collecting the petitions, maybe we could specifically notify him, since he seems to be the most effective in getting hold of the neighbors.
So, so absolutely, at the meeting where we plan the land use committee report, we can certainly put that on the front of our website, or front page of our website. The gentleman who has the petition, as was suggested earlier, please provide that petition to our clerk. And when you do that, if you could provide your contact information, I'll certainly make a phone call. That's not a big deal at all. We want to give everybody the opportunity to hear how land use says reports back, and we can certainly do that. Councilman Chase, obviously you're on land use and you generally do the land use reports, so I'm quite certain that you'll remind me to make sure that all that happens.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Wright?
I make a motion that we take the Catalpa Farm design process back to land use for further deliberations.
Okay.
Second that.
That's it.
Moved and seconded. Is general consensus? I guess all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Direction to the
Opposed?
town manager.
Abstain. Okay. Go. It's Township Manager.
I,
basically have your
that one's
direction.
clear.
Okay.
It goes to land use. Okay. Now from the council, again, we did have a motion.
So I'll make
Second on
them,
the
at this
table.
point, I now will make a motion, since the township manager has direction, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
10:15.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion.
Would the gentleman who spoke about statistics
We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Appreciate your.